Pranakasha livestream.
Hi folks, this is Matt at Pranakasha Productions, and today we have the extreme good fortune of talking with Jonathan Lane of Fan Film Factor. Woo! Yeah! Now, truth be told, Jonathan and I just met each other on Facebook Messenger like 2 days ago or something like that.
Yep.
So, and it's I was actually watching Interlude Axanar, which is like your magnum.
Well, it's not Interlude to Axanar, it's just Interlude.
Oh, it's just called Interlude. Okay, yeah. It's a fan film.
The fan film
Interlude. That
it is an interlude between Prelude to Axanar and Axanar.
When Axanar hasn't even come out yet, right?
It is in the process of being produced. Finally, they just had a recording session a few weeks ago.
Right. Yeah.
Green screen, and then they're expecting it to be out. Mark Edward Lewis, who's the co-director of it, says, and he's going to be the editor as well. He says, assuming that the stuff is filmed in time, they've got the shoot scheduled, that he will have it out in the summer.
And if any of you don't know what Axanar is, shame on you.
Shame on you.
This is Axanar.
Oh, you got the calendar.
I got the calendar, and I've got the special one that is signed by the actors.
Mine has not arrived yet, but
yeah.
I ordered mine as well.
So Axanar is
Axanar is a calendar, everybody. That's all you need to know. It's a calendar. It hangs on your wall. You'll love it.
A Star Trek calendar where the ship's upside down, like the nacelles kind of droop, because the guy who did it was like spatially challenged.
There's the USS Aries. But
yeah, the Aries.
Nice little pewter one.
There it is. It's kind of phasing in and out of subspace.
I know it is. This is like filling in a web here. Okay. Anyway, I'll leave it over there.
So, anyways, I had watched Prelude. I think I'm not Prelude, Interlude. I think 3 times now, and I was especially the last time, to tell you the truth, the last time I watched it is because, you know what, I need a couple more actors in my show. And so I watched it because I really liked the production quality of your guys'. It's amazingly good. And there was a particular actor that I really spotted. So I sent Alec Peters a note, the Axanar guru. I said, do you know how I can find out who these actors are in Interlude? And then he said, yeah, go talk to Jonathan Lane. He's on Facebook. And so then
it's odd because Alec is the one who cast those actors that I have in Interlude in Axanar. They're already going to be in his sequel. The whole reason they're in Prelude is I wanted to be consistent, or with an Interlude. I wanted to be consistent with him. So, you know, that's why the people you were asking about, I said, well, Alec told me. So he is basically passing the buck to me because I guess he's just too busy or too lazy.
Well, yeah, Alec is a busy guy. I know that. And and if you haven't, we've also done an interview with Alec on this channel, so I'll put a link in the description. Go ahead and watch those too, and then you'll find all about Axanar and so on. So, anyways, that's how we got to know each other. And then I was like, "Hey, do you want to be on my show?" I'd be interviewed on my show, and then here we are. So
I love to talk.
That's about all I know. And then I took a look at fanfilmfactor.com. And then I joined Fan Film Factor Facebook group.
Fan Film Forum is actually
Fan Film Forum.
Love 3 Fs. If you can put 3 Fs together, that's me.
Okay. So, and that's about all we know about each other. And then apparently you've actually watched Egotastic Trek too.
Okay, so yeah, and by the way, so we were just BSing just before he pushed the record button. He said, "No, wait, let's start recording this." So this is the conversation that was about to happen. I was about to tell him the story. He said, no, let me record this. So Fan Film Factor, Star Trek fan films, all Star Trek fan films, all the time. I blog like 2 or 3 times a week. I've written probably more than 1,500 blogs about Star Trek fan films. I interview folks. It's news. Go there. Anyway, so it's time for my end of the year review. And I try to just sort of encapsulate everything that's happened in the world of fan films in a single blog. Usually it runs to about 2,000 to 2,500 words because there's a lot happening in Star Trek fan film. And so I called up Vance Major, who has himself produced, I don't know, like 150, 200 different fan films. It's all like on his cell phone.
The last time I talked to him, because I met Vance at Star Trek Las Vegas this summer, and the last time I talked to him, he said he'd done 108 fan films.
Yeah, so he's got to get to 150 by now.
Yeah, I told him, that you should do a celebration, because 108 is like a magical number in a lot of traditions, like in Buddhism and Hinduism and other types of isms. Yeah.
Oh, I would have thought 69 and the ism that I like the best. Is this a G-rated?
69. 69. Okay, so I'm not sure what ism that would be.
Or asm in that case.
Yeah, asm. 69. Well, that would be a double asm, hopefully. Anyways, dang it.
Oh, this is going places. This is oh, for God's sake. Erase. Jurassic erase. I had no idea what he was going to get when he said, "Hey, John, you want to do an interview?" Well, anyway, I was going over with Vance because there's at this point there's way too many fan films out there for me to watch, like all of them.
There's tons of them now.
It's ridiculous, the Star Trek fan film guidelines.
If it weren't for Alec Peters, we would have more fan films now.
Yeah, thank God for Alec Peters that I don't have more fan films. Yeah, so the Star Trek guidelines, the fan film guidelines, which basically says, hey, you can make your fan film as long as you do this, this, and this, and this, apparently did not kill Star Trek fan films the way we all predicted.
They didn't. And also, I don't know if I should say this, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm just completely not following those guidelines because they're too restrictive.
Well, first of all, I'm not really sure if you're the droids that CBS is looking for.
Well, that's the thing. Now. The thing is, there's tons of people that are doing series now, fan series, like what I do. So, according to last time I looked at that guideline, you weren't allowed to do that. But I was like, you know what? Forget this.
No, there's a lot. The folks are pushing it a little bit, and here's what they're pushing. Viacom, CBS, if you're listening, you already know this from other interviews I've done.
Yeah.
Here's the ones that are being pushed. The first one is, yes, there are folks that are doing fan series. It's just. It's hard not to when you've got a group of people who are so enthusiastic, and sometimes you have sets, these gorgeous, TOS sets that are in Kingsland, Georgia, and Arkansas.
Right, and they all look great.
And people like playing the same character or whatever. They want to be in a series, an ongoing series. And the only reason that CBS put that in as the first guideline, it had nothing to do with Axanar. Axanar wasn't a series. Axanar was just going to be a TV movie, 2-hour movie. But they did that for Renegades because just before the guidelines were released, back at the end of 2015, they released in 2016 the guidelines in June. But at the end of 2015, the folks at Star Trek Renegades were planning on making 12 webisodes a year, what they called a season, and they announced this at the same point in time that they were told by CBS, you are not a pilot, stop saying you're a pilot. If we wanted a pilot, we would have asked you for a pilot. We didn't ask you for a pilot, therefore you are not a pilot. And so they got a thorough browbeating, and then Alec got sued because he was the first one across $1 million. But if he hadn't gotten sued, Renegades would have gotten sued.
Axanar.
But Axanar got sued.
No, Alex beat them back and got them to settle.
He basically beat them to a tie. But when you're going against two Fortune 500 companies, two Fortune 100 companies, I think probably because that's CBS and Paramount. The fact that you can beat them to a tie, to a settlement, and they still let you make your fan film, just, it can't be 2 hours long. It's got to be 2 15-minute parts. But, I'll consider that a win if you've got like literally a company two companies that have spent $1 million suing.
Yeah. Well, have you heard, he told you, you probably know this story. For one, Alec is an actor, a lawyer. So he knew a bit about the business. And then two, he got a really good law firm that did it pro bono for him.
Yep,
that was just really interested in the case. So those two things.
They took the case because the fan films were becoming very prolific, and they were like, this could be precedent setting. If we can show that fan films are fair use, that makes law, and that is like every lawyer dreams of setting precedent and making law. Not like an actual legislature, but when something where the law is not written well enough because the law was written 250 years ago.
Well, something that goes back to Roman times.
Well, fair
Yeah,
use
not
actually,
so much.
fair use actually started about 350 years ago, but we could
Oh, I
start.
thought there was
We're
fair use
so
back when
tangent. Yeah.
once they translated a cuneiform, the little wedges, then that was the dawn of fair use. That's what I heard.
No, fair use actually comes from British law before
Okay.
we were actually a country, and but it really was reestablished in the 1970s with the Copyright Act. And I will not go into a lecture on this,
Okay.
but basically, fair use, for those who want the Crib Notes version of it, is basically the compromise between freedom of speech, meaning you can say anything you want,
Right.
and you own what you write. It's your property because you have a copyright on it. Copyright and free speech are literally the opposite.
Right.
So this is the compromise between where, okay, you have permission to use it without their permission if you're doing such and such. Like, for example, if you're making fun of Pepsi and you need to use their logo because you have some critical need to make fun of them, they're never going to give you permission to do that.
Right.
So it is a fair use of their logo because critical speech is protected under freedom of speech.
Now, if it weren't for
Anyway.
fair use, there would be no YouTube. I mean,
Well, yeah, well, I mean, YouTube has now gotten to the point where they will actually, they'll give you a copyright notice, but they'll say, okay, the person who owns this copyright is allowing you to use it, but they
right.
get any money that's generated. And I'm like, oh, that's fine. I'm using Neil Diamond
good.
song or whatever. Give him the money. He deserves it.
But that's the thing. I know all about this because like my fan series is all clips from other stuff. And then I put actors into it, green screen them in, and then I get tons of things. Every single one of my episodes is like, you can't monetize this because of such and such. So all the ad revenue is going to them instead. And I'm like, fine, I don't mind. They can have the $5.
We need to back this up 16 different tangents because mentioning everything is the first question that we were going to talk about how I knew him. Because the first thing I said, because I started interviewing Mark, because that's what I do on Fan Films Actor. So I said, have you done a Star Trek fan film, that I might have seen?
Wait, Mark?
And
I thought we were talking about Vance.
Well, sorry. Well, we were talking about Vance because I asked Vance. Well, okay, so you told me that yes, you did something. Well, I had been talking to Vance about all the fan films that have been coming out this year. And I was going over like, okay, I can't cover everything item by item by item.
Right. This is Vance Owen, by the way, who's another one of fan film guru.
Vance Major, actually. Owen is his middle name.
Vance Major Owen, yeah.
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 Which was, by the way, that was a Facebook glitch. His name is actually Vance Owen Major. Owen is his middle name. But apparently, when he signed up for Facebook, it got mixed up, and so he's actually listed as Vance Major Owen. People think that's his name. No, it's actually his Vance Major, but you can call him Vance Major Owen. He's fine with that. But anyway, so I was talking to him one night, and he works the overnight shift. So I'm in California. It was midnight for me, and it was 2 a.m. in the morning for him. He was halfway through his workday, and. Anyway, so I was like going over all of the what I like to call the rest, the Gilligan's Island and the rest fan films, because it can only feature like maybe 2 or 3 per month.
Right.
Of the years, like, okay, so what else? And we're like coming up with like, okay, who gets an honorable mention or whatever? And he said, well, have you seen Egotastic Trek?
Yeah.
And I said, no, I haven't. And he said, stop whatever you're doing and just go and watch. You don't have to watch that much of it. Just,
all right, Vance. Man.
Just like watch 2 minutes and then get back to me. I ended up watching 4. I couldn't handle more than that. My brain started exploding.
Yeah. And
I was like, okay, I don't know what this is, but I am way too sober to be watching it.
And I assume this is episode 1, right?
This was episode 1, yes.
Okay. Of course, one thing I always tell everybody is we learn by doing. Mm-hmm. So it improves as it goes on. So like, I think I have 3 episodes now, 1, 2, and 3, and I'm working on 4. Episode 2, I thought was really good. And then episode 3, I'm quite proud of too. But then I go back to episode 1 and I'm realizing this is just like the really early TOS episodes where they're still trying to figure everything out, And I'm like, this is actually pretty good still, even though it's not, it's a more rough around the edges, and but anyway, but you have to be able to if some people just can't handle how, I mean, the way my brain works, I don't know if you notice, is it's easy to go off on tangents. So my show goes in these weird directions all the time. And then I try to bring it back really quick so that it'll somehow have a thread that is still Star Trek,
You know who did that? Do you know who all else in the world was the king of tangents?
Well, who might that be?
A fellow by the name of Gene Wesley Roddenberry.
Gene Roddenberry, I remember
Gene
him.
Roddenberry was the king of tangents. The first time I ever saw Gene, it was 1983. It was my very first Star Trek convention in New York City at the Roosevelt Hotel. Talk about going off on tangents. I'm giving you a tangent about tangents.
Well, you're already doing a fan film of a fan film, so you're the guy.
So there I was walking around, and the dealer's room was over, there's a Roosevelt Hotel was like way over there, and then there was like this little smaller dealer's area right outside of the main auditorium. And I don't know what was in there, but I wasn't interested in it.
Dealers,
I was waiting for the
like
next
vendors and stuff.
Yeah, like little vendors, like the free tables were right outside. The dealer's room was like way over on the other side of the hotel.
Okay.
But this is where like the fan clubs were and whatever.
Where you find things like Space Command. Whoops, you don't want to see my belly button.
Oh yes,
Space Command, Mark Zicree. Sorry,
Mark Zicree of Space Command.
That's it.
Mark. I have interviewed him many a time.
Mark is another tangent guru. Oh, let's see if I can do this. Sorry. Oops.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Oh, it's there.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I think it's upside down though.
Oh.
Or it's sideways.
How's that?
Okay. Yeah, but now we can't see it. No, okay. The S's are looking like W's, dude.
Wait,
turn it. There you go. Okay. Yes.
Ta-da.
Space Command.
Sorry, guys.
Yes, well, I'm not going to get taken on a tangent. We're going to be back in Gene Roddenberry. Back in the area, the little freebie area right in front of the main auditorium. But and I was not in
Mark
there. And
Zicree might have been there.
He could have been. I don't know. I mean,
knowing him, he knows everybody. Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm waiting for things to start for the next. I guess it was like James Doohan or Walter Koenig who was about to go on, and so I'm waiting. And I noticed there's a room. It's like a smaller little conference room off to the side, and the door's open. It's a whole bunch of people are in there. I have no idea what's going on. So I wandered in, and there was like this seat at the table. Somebody just got up, it was like right in the corner, big conference table. It was probably about maybe 30 people crammed into this room. And I just took the seat, what the heck, I don't know who the heck's talking. And I started listening to the guy. So interesting. I mean, the stories he's telling. And he just keeps going off on tangent after tangent after tangent. And every tangent is so interesting.
I know.
And he never gets the problem. End of the story. And it wasn't until he was almost done that I realized this is Gene Roddenberry. I mean, holy crap, I'm in a room with 30 people and Gene Roddenberry. Because before that, I was just like, I have no idea who I'm talking to. This is the most interesting man I've ever seen. And then
was his hair sufficiently unkempt and his clothing sufficiently unstylish?
Oh, it was 1983. I barely remember it now, but all I know is that I was captivated, and my only frustration is every time he was in the middle of a story, he never finished it, and so there are so many of these unfinished stories that I never knew the answer to.
Yeah.
So tangents. That's why I always finish my tangents. I want to go back and finish the tangents. I'm not going to be like Gene.
Okay, so actually we're still on a tangent because this interview is supposed to be about you and about your fan films.
Way to bring it back to the first tangent. That's right.
So let me ask you this. So when you did the Axanar one, that obviously wasn't your first fan film ever because it was too well done, right? So you'd already had experience doing that kind of stuff, right?
All righty. It was my first fan film, but
really?
first of all, it wasn't my fan film.
You wrote the script, though, right?
I wrote the script, but
and you directed it too, didn't you?
I did not know. The director was Victoria Fox. The director of photography was Joshua Irwin. Okay. And the smartest move I ever made was to ask the two of them to help me with it, because they actually know what they're doing. They are actually folks who work in the film industry in Arkansas.
Mhm.
Victoria is an actor and a casting director. She had directed, I think, 1 or 2 films before that, but she wanted to, she's an actor director. So, she understands how to talk to actors and make sure.
Did she play a character in it?
She was the doctor in Interlude. So when you see the person on that Nego communicator, that's Victoria.
Okay.
And Josh Irwin is an amazing technician in terms of his knowledge of cameras and lenses and lighting and such. Josh is now. Oh, go ahead.
The lighting was great, and you did have some really fancy camera work where forget what you call it, where you bring one subject out of focus and the other one in during the shot, which is hard to do right. And then if you mess it up, and the actors just did a great take, you still have to throw it out because the camera, it's not like you do it after the fact.
Yeah,
so that's kind of a gutsy thing to do. But there were other cool camera angles, and there was a lot of cool really well done cinematography in that.
Josh is the king of cinematography. Now he's since gone on to be a full-fledged director, but at the time, I didn't understand the difference between a director and a director of photography. So I figured that Victoria would direct the actors and Josh would direct, the cameras and the lighting or whatever, and the two of them would kind of work synergistically like that. Ultimately, Josh explained to me that no, my credit, Josh's credit, is going to be director of photography. So Victoria is technically the director and Josh is the director of photography. But in my mind, they're both directors because that was always the way I saw them as a team. But so let me tell you why Interlude happened.
Okay.
Because the story behind it is why this is my first fan film. I've been a big Axanar fan since before Prelude came out. I was cheerleading it back in 2014 in January before they even started their first crowdfunder.
Okay, so you contributed the first $5.
I was there. I think I gave 100 to the first crowdfunder. I think I gave 150 to the next one. I mean, I couldn't give enough money to see action. And then I helped. And then I helped pack perks. I mean, because I'm in Southern California, I'm in Los Angeles, so it was easy for me to drive up to Valencia and help Alec, volunteer in person. I literally was like folding posters for hours.
Oh, so he used to live in California?
Mm-hmm. He was in Toluca Lake. Yeah.
So why'd he move? He lives in Atlanta now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So after, okay, let's go back a little bit. So initially, the idea for Axanar, there was an idea for Axanar that was 2 parts. Axanar was going to be this huge Star Trek fan production. It was going to be movie quality.
Right.
2 hours of professional people. Professional actors, professional camera people, professional composers, professional makeup people, whole works.
Mm-hmm.
It was potentially going to be hundreds of thousands, if not more, to do. And
for a 2-hour movie, if you can do it at $100,000, you're like a genius.
Well, hundreds of thousands. I mean, he ultimately it was going to be like a $3 million movie because he discovered that he could actually get that. But in addition to this, he was going to build sets for it.
Right. That
he wanted to be the West Coast Star Trek sets that existed in upstate New York at James Cawley's Retro Studios. They had these amazing TOS sets. Right. In Kingsland, Georgia, Star Trek Continues and Starship Farragut had built these amazing TOS sets.
Right.
At the time, there were sets in Oklahoma City that had a bridge set.
Farragut built their own sets?
Farragut, yeah, the Star Trek Continues sets were originally the Starship Farragut sets.
Oh, wow. Okay, this show, I mean, I don't know all this stuff. I'm kind of
go to Fan Film Factor and look up Starship Farragut.
Okay, because I know I'm a little bit aware of Farragut, and I'm also Facebook friends with him. So, and there's another set of very well done, beautiful sets, really great story, and so on. Just going off on a tangent. What?
We're going off on a tangent.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, sorry. Yeah, let's just forget what I was saying and go back to what you were saying.
But just go to Fan Film Factor, look up Starship Farragut. I got a 3-part history on that. I got a 5-part history, and then there's 6-part history on Star Trek Continues. You'll see all the stuff about the sets.
Okay.
But anyway, what Alec wanted to do was to create a studio that would have sets that were west of the Rockies.
Airy Studios.
Airy Studios. Initially, Valkyrie Studios, and then Industry Studios, because they found a place on Industry Boulevard. And his idea was located as far away from Los Angeles as you can, while still being in the 35-mile radius where you don't have to pay actors for lodging and transportation.
That's typical Alec shrewd thinking.
You know what? Every so often he has a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Alec, and Alec loves me.
He's cool. I
tell myself every day that. But no. Anyway, the thing was that he wanted to create a studio with sets that not only could Axanar use, but after Axanar was done, other fan films could use without having to go to upstate New York. They would be right here in Los Angeles. And the idea was that the studio would be able to operate without fans constantly having to donate to pay the rent, because once those sets were created, they would be able to offer it for use in like commercials and to other production companies making independent films. Maybe UCLA and USC film schools would be able to like buy a license so that their students could come and use it for a discounted price and whatever for their student films. The whole idea was that this would be a quote unquote for-profit studio that would be self-sustaining. And obviously there'd be a few people who would, work for the studio, including Alec himself. Right. That would get paid regular salaries to make sure that the set was, the studio was clean and it was available, and that there was, the electrical system didn't go down. Everything was operating properly. And so, in preparation for this, Alec created a proof of concept fan film, which was Prelude to Axanar. They raised $100,000 for this, which was basically they were only expecting like 10,000. They raised 100,000, and this fan film that they made for less than $100,000, because Kickstarter gets like a chunk of that, and then they had to pay for perks or whatever. So let's say about $80,000 was spent making this 20-minute History Channel documentary style film called Prelude to Axanar. And
if you haven't seen that, you got to check that out. I'll put a link to it in the description.
Yeah, watch that before Interlude, or else you're not going to know what's going on.
Right.
And they had actors like Tony Todd, who had been in Star Trek. He played Worf's brother Kern, and he played the older Jake Sisko. They had J.G. Hertzler, who had played the Klingon Martok, and a whole bunch of other characters in various series on Star Trek. They had Gary Graham actually reprising his role as Ambassador Soval from Vulcan from the series Enterprise, because in the time frame of Prelude to Axanar, which is 20 years before Kirk, Soval's still alive, and the Vulcans live a long time. And the most intriguing actor they had was Richard Hatch from Battlestar Galactica.
As a Klingon.
He wanted to play the Klingon. He was originally offered the role of like Sam Travis or one of the other guys, and he said, no, I want to play the Klingon. This is a fascinating character.
Yeah.
And I met Richard, and we chatted for an entire dinner at P.F. Chang's about Klingons. We had like 6 people at the table, and he just wanted to know. And I was telling him, watch this episode, because Kor is this kind of a Klingon, but you definitely want to take a look at Martok, because he's kind of a Klingon that was kind of salt of the earth. And anyway, talking about, the history of World War II and Japan and samurai and everything. Talk about a man who did tangents. I love it.
Plus, I think he and Alec were friends. Like, I think Alec said he went to his house for an acting class once a month for several years. So they knew each other really well.
Yeah, Richard gave acting classes. So, and then finally Kate Vernon, who was also in Battlestar Galactica with Richard, was in it. So you have these 5 really amazing actors and Alec.
Alec, yeah.
Well, Alec's the first to admit. Alec is the first to admit that he was not as good an actor, even close to as good an actor as any of these other people. That it was an honor just to be with them.
Right.
He wasn't looking to be an amazing actor. He just wanted a chance to play Garth, this amazing character from Star Trek, who wasn't amazing in the original Star Trek. But
okay, so I'm going to ask you a question about that. I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
So when I went back and looked up the episode that had Garth Avizar in it, I didn't realize that it was the one where they were in the insane asylum, and Garth was like the most insane, devious guy in the episode.
Lord Garth!
Yeah, and plus he was also had the ability to shapeshift.
Yeah, because this was science fiction, and this was the third season, and you could do whatever you wanted in the third season.
So none of that is part of the Axanar Garth. The Axanar Garth is just a normal guy, as far as I can tell.
The crucial scenes that affected a young Alec Peters when he was still in high school, watching TOS on WPIX in New York City, Channel 11 every night, like I was.
Oh, I watched on Channel 11 too.
Oh, there you go.
That was in Seattle, though.
Okay, well, I was in New York City. Alec was out in Long Island, or Long Island in New York, as we say it with our accents. New York.
Now, did he see it with his father?
Probably.
Okay, well,
Boston,
whatever.
You always went to Boston there.
Yeah, forget about it.
Yeah, forget about it. My sister, Angela. Anyway, anyway, so Alec, there were two scenes in Whom Gods Destroy was named the episode, where the crazy Lord Garth calms down enough to almost be seen as the man he used to be. And the man he used to be was Kirk's hero. That was what was so intriguing about this, is Kirk was our hero. We saw Captain Kirk as, the paragon, and who
manliness.
But I mean, a diplomat, an explorer, a statistician. Who would Captain Kirk idolize? And he idolizes this fellow Garth.
Garth the Bizarre.
Izar. John Big Blue Tay. So yes, the Garth was Kirk's hero. His victory at Axanar was required reading at Starfleet Academy. He had charted and contacted more first contacts species and just explored more planets than any other captain in Starfleet history. There's all this amazing stuff, and yet this guy is walking around with a mental illness. So we don't see him except for these two scenes. One where Kirk almost brings him back to reality, out of the madness, almost is able to talk him back to sanity. But of course, it doesn't work. That's only half interesting. But we see the man for just a moment, and then in the end, when he's finally cured, he doesn't remember any of it, and he looks at Captain Kirk and he goes, "Do I know you, sir?" And Kirk goes, "No." And he sticks out his hand and said, "Well, pleased to meet you." And there was this majesty and this humility, and actor Steve Einat, who had played him, did such an amazing job with it that you couldn't see any of the madness in that moment. And Alex said, "I want to know more about that guy. I want to know who Garth is, not Lord Garth, not Garth of Izar. I want to know who Fleet Captain Garth is. What did he do at Axanar?" And that led to a development of a script that ultimately was read by, amongst other people, David Gerald, who was the man who created the Tribbles in the Trouble with Tribbles episode, the man who wrote that. And David gave Alec some feedback on his script. He said, the thing about writing a war movie, because that was the whole idea, is the Victory at Axanar, the 4 years war, is it's not about the war. The war is just the setting. It's about the people, because in war, different people react in different ways. And you put them into the crucible. You don't write about the war, you write about the people. And that made all the difference with Prelude, with Axanar itself. So Alec wrote this proof of concept, this 20-minute History Channel documentary where everybody was just going to be sitting in a chair against the green screen and talking to the camera, which sounds like the most boring Star Trek film ever. It's like you're basically describing a FASA role-playing game.
Right.
And yet, with the visual effects and the music and the acting, and honestly,
and the editing,
editing by Robert Meyer Burnett.
Yeah, he was good.
He did an incredible job. I know Rob hates my guts now, but honestly, Rob, take a bow again because you did a spectacular job, as he knows.
Here we talk about that subject for a bit.
So don't go into that quite yet. Let me just get you back to. I'm not going to let you to tangent this, but I will take it a little faster because I realize I'm taking up a lot of time.
Right.
Okay, so fast forward to Prelude comes out.
Okay.
Everybody loves it. This is 2014. By 2015, Alec has raised upwards of $1.2 million.
Right. And that was largely because George Takei saw it and really liked it and helped promote it, I think, through his Twitter or something like that.
Yep. The first Kickstarter was at like $220,000 with about 2 days to go. And George Takei tweeted about it, said, "This is the Star Trek you should support." And suddenly they got like another $200,000 in 38 hours. It was incredible. They were $460,000 at that first Kickstarter. And then the next year they released the 3-minute Vulcan scene. If you Google the Vulcan scene and Axanar, you can see part of what would have been the Axanar movie.
And that was completely green screens. But it was really well done. It was amazingly well done.
Robert Meyer Burnett directed that again.
And then you had Gary Graham.
Gary Graham reprising his role again as Soval, and incredible visual effects by Tobias Richter. And it's just 3 minutes of something that looked so amazing.
Right.
In fact, it looked so amazing that CBS was worried because
CBS said, "Just a second there."
Well, what they were worried about, and this is a justifiable worry.
I'm out of gas.
Oh, no, your phaser doesn't work. It needs to be recharged.
Maybe I had the safety on a sec. No.
Or maybe you need to change the battery. Anyway, while you're playing with your phaser, so CBS was going to be launching this new series called Star Trek Discovery. They hadn't even announced it yet. Nobody even knew it existed yet. It's late 2015. And
the triangular-looking ship.
Yes. Well, the thing about Star Trek Discovery is it was going to be set 10 years before Captain Kirk during a war with the Klingons. And suddenly the Vulcan scene comes out, and it's all about Axanar. And they knew about Axanar because Alec talked to them about it. He specifically met with studio executives saying, "Can you give me a set of guidelines so that I don't step on any toes?" And they said, "We can't tell you what you can and can't do, but if you cross the line, we'll let you know."
Yeah, then we'll sue you.
Well, that was the thing. If we'll let you know with this piece of paper saying, "Good morning, you're being sued." But before that, before he knew that there was going to be a lawsuit, he was asking. They said, "Look, this is what we're doing." He met with them 4 different times during the lawsuit. It came out that yes, Alec had met with them. They told him specific things, but at the time, what was happening behind closed doors, and actually a few floors up, was that the worry when Star Trek Discovery came out, it was going to be only subscription based. You had to pay to be part of CBS All Access in order to see Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
And they worried that if people were looking at YouTube and they saw something with 1 million views that was a 2-hour-long Star Trek movie of the quality of the Vulcan scene, and, oh, by the way, it's set 20 years before Captain Kirk in the middle of a war with the Klingons, which is essentially what Discovery was going to be, except it was going to be 10 years before Captain Kirk, during a war with the Klingons. You're like, wait a second, we can't let this come out. This is confusion in the marketplace. And it wasn't that they were worried that everybody's going to prefer this.
Yeah, I mean, like the galaxy's too big to have 2 different wars happening at the same time. People won't be able to handle that.
That wasn't the worry.
Too small. The galaxy's too small.
Well, but the worry was, quite honestly, that people would see this and think they had found a free version of what CBS wanted people to pay for. That they wouldn't be smart enough to understand that, no, this isn't the CBS Star Trek because it looked so good. I mean, it was still, it it still had certain elements of being a fan film, but it just, I mean, watch it. It was just, it could have been, which with very few changes, a snippet of a Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
And so that's when CBS decided to, go after Alec Peters with both barrels. They sued him for literally hundreds of millions of dollars. They said that there were thousands of infringements on their copyright, and each infringement, each of those thousands would have been like $150,000, maximum. So like this was literally, tens of millions of dollars lawsuit. And also, they named as co-defendants Richard Hatch and J.G. Hertzler.
Oh, J.G. Hertzler was named in it. I didn't know that.
Yeah, anybody who was part of it. So they could have been on the hook for this. So Alec was shitting bricks for 30 days, and they would not return his calls. That was the thing. It was literally like 3 days before New Year's, before when he got this, the complaint.
Well, it's interesting. Well, that I didn't know that. So I didn't know that the actors were on the hook for this too.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that immediately impresses me is that after all this happened, those same actors are still part of Axanar. Like they still
some are.
Well, some are, yeah. But they had. I mean, but I noticed Alex is an interesting personality, and he tends to tick off certain types of people apparently. Because
Axanar is acerbic or assertive, depending on if you're on Team.
Yeah. So I can see. I mean, he just basically tells it like it is from his universe, and if you're not like in that thing, he's just gonna basically tell you to F off.
Yep. He's got that Greek blood, and God forbid you piss him off. But here's the thing about Alec. If you're a friend of his, he is as loyal to you as could be. And
good to know.
When he was building those sets in California, and my son at the time was 4 years old, and unfortunately my wife couldn't stay home with him that day. I had volunteered to help. This is once again doing perks again. This is my second time doing it, and so I went to Valencia, to now Industry Studios, where the sets were in the process of being built, and they looked gorgeous. I mean, this gorgeous bridge was incredible, right. And I wanted to show it to Jaden, and I said to Alec, can Jaden go in there? Now, I mean, this is a 4-year-old kid. Alec had every reason to say, no, it's not safe, whatever. He took Jaden on the tour. He let Jaden play on the bridge and climb into the captain's chair and push all the buttons. And I mean, as far as Jaden was concerned, Alec was building the Enterprise, because Jaden watched Star Trek with me back then. And it was the coolest thing for him. And, he bought Jaden lunch that day. I mean, granted, he bought me lunch as well because we were all helping for free. But, he gave Jaden patches to take with him. I mean, it was just, he was nice to my son.
Yeah.
And he's been nice to me. And, he's also been pissy at me, and it's a thing, is Alec is like one of those people you're related to that you have a good relationship with, and then you get pissed off at, and you come back together again.
Sounds like me and my wife.
Exactly. Yeah. And I haven't agreed with everything he's done. I mean, he's sues lots and lots of people. I'm like, Alec, don't, and he says stuff on Facebook, like, Alec, no, better to say nothing. And he says everything he shouldn't have said, and it comes back to bite him.
I've seen him go off a little bit on some of his live streams even, and I'm like, dude.
Hey, I was the one
down a bit.
I was the one back in 2015 when Alec released his first annual report. He had $1 million in donations, and he wanted to show people how it was being spent.
Yep.
Right? Show them how this, this is how much this costs, this is how much this goes. Anyway, there's a line item for salary, $35,000 for Alec. And this is when everything went wrong. And I was the one who told him, I said, Alec, don't put that in there. I mean, I literally, I was a truth to power. I said, do not put your salary in there. Unfortunately, he didn't listen to me, and everything went south from that point because, you're not supposed to make money off of Star Trek. And the idea was, okay, Alec was actually doing a lot to make to bring attention to Axanar so people would donate. That $1.2 million didn't happen by itself.
But,
The
it takes a lot,
tweet,
but you have to fundraise like that. You got to put a lot into it.
yeah, I mean, the Sulu tweet wasn't, just, George Takei found out about it. George found out about it because Alec was actually, trying to get through his manager.
Pitching it to him, and yeah.
So, Alec earned his money. I mean, ultimately, here's the funny part about all this is at the time Alec paid himself $37,000, $35,000. He had put in $75,000 of his own money. So it wasn't a salary; it was reimbursement.
Yeah.
But the fans were already now going on either Team Alec or Team Anti-Alec. And
there's still that still exists today. I've discovered.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, it still exists today, 7 years later. I mean, come on, it's not like the guy killed someone. Okay, I mean, it's just he made some mistakes, and honestly, he didn't pay himself a salary. He reimbursed himself.
Yeah.
And yes, he bought some tires for his car because he was driving ridiculous amounts of distance to Salt Lake City and to, Northern California and out to Arizona, and his tires needed replacing. And, did he host some dinners where, he took out people who he wanted to be big donors? Yes, he did. So, for some fans, that was the unforgivable sin.
Did he schmooze some potential donors of his show?
You used our donation money to buy tires and sushi.
Well, Gene Roddenberry would never do something like that.
Well, he had a lot more to work with. But anyway, so
I don't know. Have you seen some of the behind-the-scenes things about Star Trek, the original Star Trek? I mean, there's some stuff. A lot of stuff happened behind the scenes.
I have right over here. Plug it.
Oh yeah. Okay. Whoops.
Oh wait. It's not. Wait.
Darn that. Okay. Well, here, put it on my screen. Mine won't do that.
Well.
Kind of shove it over this way, and I'll grab it. Well, come on. Yeah. It always works in the commercials.
Well, that's all right, because you know what? It was under a pile of books, and now they're all falling. Oh, jeez, this is not good. Okay.
Well, you have a Tower of Babel of books.
Well, books and CDs actually, but yeah, that was a mistake pulling that thing down.
Yeah,
I won't do that again.
Okay, we still haven't talked about. We really
we get to have this conversation for another hour and a half, right, or 3 hours, or whatever.
Well, I'll do. This could be my longest video ever. I could do a 2-hour video. I haven't done one yet. So
let's see how long we
let's do it.
Let's do the Jerry Lewis thing. Let's see if we can still be doing this in 12 hours. 12 hours, 24 hours, 24 hours of Jonathan Lane. You will go crazy.
We can do that. I can do that, man. I think, see, if you get two squirrel brains together, that's dangerous. Because you can get layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. And then 8 hours later, if you're really good at it, then you can tie it all back and say, and thus, that is how.
And just like that. Sorry, that Sex and the City thing is such a train wreck.
I know.
Okay, no, we're not going to tangent that. No, don't.
Okay, slight tangent. But this you know that some of the Star Trek Discovery actors are really into Dungeons and Dragons, right?
I've seen a few posts by Anthony Rapp.
Okay, now have you had any experience in that realm?
I have that realm, not since high school.
Well, that's the last time I did it too. But
okay, well, there
so we both played Dungeons and Dragons in high school.
Not a lot of it though, but
yeah. Now, when I did it, that was in the 80s. So I graduated in 84. So while we were playing Dungeons and Dragons, Blondie, Heart of Glass was playing on the radio, and the Cars were playing. Another One Bites the Dust, and so on.
Wait a second. The Cars were not Another One Bites the Dust. That was Queen.
Oh, sorry. I said that. I didn't mean to say that.
Okay, because Cars, I don't mind you coming here and wasting all my time.
Yeah. Okay. So Queen, but the Queen song that I really remember is "Crazy Little Thing Called Love," which, if you listen to it now, I'm a musician too. I forgot to mention that, but you listen to it now and you're like, that was so damn good, that song, because it's so outside of their style, but they do it so well, and the guitar solos are so cool, and just the whole thing about that song is great.
Hey, I was listening to Fat Bottom Girls just yesterday, picking up my laundry, or my dry cleaning, and I mean, singing along with that song. It is impossible not to sing along with most Queen songs.
Yeah, that's a great
and you
band.
know every single word. I mean, including
Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Right.
You know, I mean, that song when that thing first came out. You know, and you're like,
Yep.
what the hell are they talking about? And it is now, you know,
Is
4 decades later, and we know every word by heart.
Yeah.
Scaramouche, Scaramouche, will you do the fandango? Thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening. Yeah.
Good stuff.
This is one of your
also
Egotastic Trek episodes.
It is.
As an interview,
Styx. Yeah. Actually, I would put a Queen song in my Egotastic Trek episode, except that Queen, I'm not going to blame Queen the band, but whoever manages the band likes to take down stuff on YouTube that has their music.
Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah. If you want to hear someone rant about it, go watch Rick Beato's channel. You ever heard of him?
Nope, but
he's an excellent guitar player, musician, music producer anyways, who's got like hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and he goes off about fair use and all that kind of stuff a lot, because certain band he basically says, I'm promoting these bands by having them on my channel, because the only reason that kids these days know about these bands that came out in the 80s is because we're promoting them. But then every once in a while there's a band like, he can't do Queen, he also can't do the Eagles, there's another band that he can't do, and it's only because the estate that owns the rights is just really old school, and they still think that you're stealing all our stuff, you're ripping us off, when no, you're not. We're giving you free advertising.
Yeah.
You know? Anyway,
well, the good news is that most people, you know, and most artists and most of the agencies understand, you know, so the majority of stuff we can use.
Now, finally, thank you.
Okay. Shall we start our second hour?
Should we talk about Jonathan Lane now?
Well,
we've done Prelude to Jonathan Lane, aka Axanar. So now we can actually talk about Jonathan Lane.
Well, I will very quickly finish up the Alec part of it to answer a question about when he moved, and then I'll get into Jonathan Lane because I'm part of it as well. Okay. So in 2017, after a year, CBS did finally settle with him because, you know, Winston and Strawn was doing their best to, you know, make this a real horse race. And at the end of 2016, the judge said this is not fair use. Now, and it was an appeals judge, or no, it wasn't an appeals judge. It was, I know it was the judge who was overseeing it, Klausner. And once you do that, you open it up to an appeal, because it's not a judge who is supposed to determine fair use. It is a jury. It's a judge finds matters of law. A jury finds matters of fact. So for a judge to say this is or is not fair use, and you cannot use fair use as a defense, see, you should still be able to use fair use as a defense, even if the judge thinks it's not fair use. You know, and then the jury has to say, no, it's not fair use. We're finding you liable for infringement. So by the judge, by Klausner saying this is not fair use, you can't use it as defense, this suddenly opened it up for an appeal. And the problem with an appeal is that would be another 2 or 3 years. So already during all of 2016, every article about Star Trek mentioned, oh, by the way, they're still suing their fans. And CBS did not want another 2 or 3 years of, and by the way, they're still suing their fans while they're trying to launch Discovery. So
and all the fans are starting to hate Star Trek because Star Trek, the new Star Trek, is evil. They don't understand what fan films are all about. They're like shutting down, blah, blah, blah. And then finally,
well, first of all, the fan films nobody knew about. So, you know, don't think that CBS was worried about fan films. They weren't. They were simply worried that somebody would see Axanar on YouTube and think that they had found free Star Trek and not subscribe. That was literally the only worry. It had nothing to do. It had nothing to do with Alec making a for-profit studio. It had nothing to do with the tires or the sushi. It was literally, we do not want to lose money by people thinking that Axanar
Which is stupid. Like, that's the old school thinking where you have a TV set that only has like 4 or 5 channels and that's all there is. Nowadays, there's no limit. So it's like things aren't even competition anymore. You can watch both. Why can't you watch both?
Well, remember, this was back in 2016, and this is
Yeah.
back before CBS.
2016, that doesn't sound very long ago to me.
It doesn't, but in 2016, Netflix was still delivering CDs or DVDs to your door.
Oh, really?
Yeah, think about it. I mean, granted, Netflix had started streaming stuff, but
not my door. I didn't have Netflix yet.
Yeah, but if you think about everything that happened so quickly, Netflix happened, Amazon Prime happened, All Access happened. I think by 2016, Netflix has stopped delivering. LaCroix.
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 Do not call it LaCroix in my presence, or I will correct you.
LaCroix.
To the end of the world. LaCroix. It's a French word.
LaCroix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never mind that the guys who own the company pronounce it wrong. All I can say is I'm sorry you guys pronounce it wrong because it's pronounced LaCroix. It's French. I took French class in high school, and if nothing else, I learned how to pronounce my favorite drink.
I switched from French to Spanish after my first because my first French class was just so boring. I said there's no teacher in this school who could be worse than Monsieur Lefrançois. So
Lefrançois.
Yeah, that was his name, Monsieur Lefrançois.
Really? And he was a French teacher. That's pretty good.
He was a French. No, he was French Canadian, as was the principal, as I discovered, of the high school, because when I went to see Mr. Poulin, I discovered that his name was not Poulin. This is like the first day of high school.
Poulin. It's probably Poulin.
Poulin.
Okay.
Poulin. It was Poulin or something like that. But it was Monsieur Poulin.
That might be Poulin.
I don't know.
If it was ENT, it'd be Poulin. Whatever. Okay, now we're on another tangent.
My God, how do we keep doing this?
Okay, back to Jonathan Lane.
Back to me. Okay, so anyway, lawsuit settles because CBS does not want to be in there. Okay, and at this point, Alec has now burned through most of that $1 million on both constructing the bridge set and turning the studio into an actual offices with carpet and whatever, and also paying electricity and everything. And because he hasn't been able to make Axanar during that year of being in trial, because they obviously you don't want to make more of what they're suing you for,
right?
So anyway, eventually the rent, which was rent and utilities were like $1,800 or $18,000 a month.
Whoa, $18,000 a month?
Yeah, it was like $12,000 for rent because he wanted to make a full studio. It was an amazing warehouse. It was huge. They put in this 6-layer floor that didn't transfer any sound.
Wow.
Elephant doors over the big truck entrance so that you couldn't hear the trucks outside.
Wow,
lighting grid on the top. Oh, it was amazing studio. Had it actually been allowed to continue to exist, it would have been the most incredible place to go and film. But unfortunately, he just started running out of money, and so by May he had to start planning to move somewhere else, or otherwise this amazing bridge set was going to wind up in the dumpster.
So, okay, Alex, sorry. But I mean, see, Alex strikes me as being a pretty practical minded guy, and he's an entrepreneur. He's done like 4 or 5 businesses throughout his life and stuff. But then, so now you're describing me this really mega studio with a rent of $12,000 a month. I mean, how could you possibly expect to draw enough business just from people creating Star Trek fan films?
Not just from people creating. They were going to get to use it for free or for a big discount. No, the idea was you're going to be close to UCLA and USC. You're going to be close to LA. Okay. That if you needed science fiction sets, because the sets were not just going to be TOS Star Trek sets, they were going to be sets of the Ares class, transporter room and captain's quarters and corridors and such. And basically, it would be like, if you could shoot your commercial on something that looked Star Trek but was far enough away that CBS wouldn't be able to sue you for it. He could have generated.
It still sounds like a pretty narrow market to me.
Well, in retrospect,
you're trying to pull out $10,000 a month just to break even.
Well, sometimes when you rent your facility, you can rent your facility for $10,000, for a day in this city.
Oh. Okay.
So, or you're giving 5,000, you're like half price, depending on what you're giving. So, a couple of days of people reserving it, and suddenly you paid your rent and utilities, and a few weeks, and now you've got expenses, and you've got enough to cover your slower days. And you've got enough to cover days when fan films are coming in and are only paying you like maybe
I see.
$500.
So he was hoping to have a couple big ticket things, and then all the fan film type of stuff was just sort of gravy after that.
Yeah.
Okay, that sort of makes sense.
But here's the thing. People make mistakes. People have bad, business plans. No business plan ever predicts a failed business within 1 or 2 years, and yet most businesses go out of business.
Okay.
So Alec be the first person to admit that if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't try to make a studio. I would just rent a studio, build the sets, keep them there for a few months, film Axanar, and be done. In 2020,
he still has a studio, but it's not a gigantic building that's like tons of overhead and all that.
Or maybe he would rent an existing studio space.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
As opposed to signing a 3-year lease. But back in 2015 when he got the studio, that they had $1 million coming in, or $500,000 at that point, and it seemed like the sky was the limit. Not that they wanted to bilk the fans, but only because they wanted to create this place for other fan films to use. Like, okay, we're going to need a big infusion of capital to, get this art rocket into orbit. And once it's in orbit, then we can do all the fun stuff. But what? It didn't work. And by the middle of 2017, Alec was moving to Georgia, was where he found a place where he could put it and be in a place where he could afford. And he wanted to be close to Atlanta because at least there are lots of film people there, so he could still make Axanar. And it cost about $20,000 to move the sets across the country. He got volunteers when he got to Atlanta to put the sets, get them off the truck and then get them back together. Meanwhile, this is where I'm entering the picture. Keep in mind, I was, there waving goodbye as they were driving away, sad that my son was not going to be able to go and play on the bridge anymore. And Alex sent me the script for Axanar's sequels. Keep in mind that the settlement said you can't make a 2-hour movie, but you can make 2 15-minute parts. And so Alec decided that instead of making a 2-hour long drama or making, the last half hour of the movie or whatever, we're going to make a documentary style like Prelude to Axanar, which was episode 3 of the 4 Years War documentary in that, fictional Star Trek universe. And so let's make episodes 4 and 5. Let's finish the story. Let's tell, the preparation for the Battle of Axanar and the actual Battle of Axanar. Let's just finish this up. And he sends me these scripts. I had not read the full 2-hour script, so I had no idea going in what he was dealing with, but he wanted my opinion. It was June of 2017. I eagerly read these. We were away in Palm Springs that weekend, and Jaden was staying with his grandparents who were close by, and Wendy and I were in a nice little luxury resort, and I am, while Wendy is, at the pool enjoying her, drink with an umbrella in it, I'm in the room on my computer reading Star Trek fan film script.
You could have printed it out and had your own umbrella at the pool.
I could have. Actually, I didn't have my printer there. Actually arrived while we were there, so I was like, I couldn't wait to read it. And then I finished reading it, and to be honest with you, I was not impressed. I wanted to see where Axanar is going. I was so excited. I loved Prelude. I loved the Vulcan Shaded. I read the script and I didn't love it at all. And
it was the first draft too, right?
Yeah, it was an early draft. But I started to write up my notes on it, and I realized I had written 6 pages, and I was only on page 2 of the script, so this wasn't good. I wouldn't have even read what I wrote. Alec's not going to read what I write. This isn't notes. This is lecturing, and I realized, what I need to show, not tell. The first thing I said was, as a writer, show, don't tell. This was all telling. I was reading this, and all telling this, telling that. Like, show, don't tell. Like, okay, I'm going to show and not tell. Because the first thing I noticed is there's no scenes on the bridge. He's building this beautiful bridge set. There's no scenes on the bridge. And I'm thinking he's not including it because he doesn't think he has enough time, because you got to truncate, 2 hours into, 30 minutes. But you could have a scene on the bridge. And I took his first scene which was just talking about how there was an ambush of a convoy that was transporting Admiral Ramirez, played by Tony Todd, and that the D7s attacked, and only one ship was able to get out of there, and another captain bravely sacrificed himself, and they were just talking about him. I wrote this scene. This and not only that, I changed it from a convoy to this is Garth and this other captain.
Right.
And the other captain is the one who sacrifices himself, so Garth can get out of there. And Garth is, he's a Kirk guy.
Right.
He's a hero. He would be the one to sacrifice himself, but he couldn't because he was the one who's carrying Ramirez.
Right.
And the whole reason for this was just to explain why Tony Todd, who plays Ramirez, was not going to be in the sequel, because Tony Todd basically told Alec to, take a leap.
Right.
He left the series, so unfortunately,
so the actor with the spear in him wasn't actually Tony Todd, I assume.
No, he was not.
I had a feeling that because you couldn't really see his face.
No, first of all, Tony Todd is SAG, and I couldn't have any Screen Actors Guild things. And not only that, I mean, I doubt Tony Todd would
Though,
all
what I heard,
the way
though,
to
according to J.G. Hertzler,
mm-hmm.
you can do SAG stuff now. There's this thing called new media that you do,
mm-hmm.
which is what all YouTube is and stuff like that. So apparently it's possible.
Yeah, it's a new media agreement, but I looked into it. There's still so many hoops to jump through. Like, for example, if you hire a non-SAG actor on your SAG production, because even if you have just one SAG actor, you become a SAG production, even if it's new media.
Right.
If you hire a non-SAG actor over a SAG actor, you have to tell them who it was, include a headshot and a biography of who they are, their contact information, and explain why you hired this actor as opposed to a SAG actor for this particular part. I had like 12 different parts. I was not going to explain for each one of those people why I didn't hire.
Can't you just say, well, because I liked them better?
You could, but I mean, the whole idea is that this is for SAG to contact those people and to invite them into SAG, because once you're on a SAG production, you qualify for SAG. That's how you sneak into SAG.
Okay.
If you get hired on a SAG production, it's like, okay, now that you're a member, you can join the club. It's weird. But there's like so much other paperwork you have, and you have to you submit your budget to them and explain like line items, stuff. I didn't even know I was going to be, spending money on yet. And
right.
But
but you did have SAG people in yours, right?
No.
Oh, they weren't yet. None of them were yet.
Well, the only person who
SAG, meaning Screen Actors Guild.
Sorry, guys, SAG actor, yeah. There was one person, James Rennell, who played the voice of Leonov, the engineer.
Uh-huh.
And he, I believe, was SAG. But we couldn't show him on screen, which is why when it cuts to the armrest,
right,
there's like a static, and it and you can't get, because we wouldn't be able to see James Rennell. We were able to hear him. And
because it's Screen Actors Guild, not Voice Actors Guild.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And the thing is, they could probably still get me for this. I mean, if the Screen Actors don't want to come after me, I'm sure that there's, something that they could say, but I doubt, I have no money. So, good luck. Also, my wife's a lawyer with, an entertainment law firm. They don't want to go after me. But here's the thing. He's on screen for like 20 seconds. I was going to do his voice. I was going to do the Russian voice of Leonov. And Alec did not like my Russian. I apparently did not have a good Russian accent.
I left them crystals are recrystallizing.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
So anyway, he said, Jamie will do it. And then the first thing Jamie did was record it into his phone, and he sounded Scottish when we did it. And then we had a version of Interlude that Alec listened to. He said, it just sounds Scottish.
Oh, he's Russian. Oh, I thought it was just kind of a weird Scottish accent.
No, he is Leonov. He's Russian.
Supposed to be Russian.
Alexei Leonov. Yes.
Leonov.
So anyway, I ended up having to ask Jamie to re-record that and try to sound less Scottish and more Russian.
Russian. Привет, command.
Spasibo.
Okay.
So anyway, here I am writing the scene.
Okay.
I write the scene of this noble sacrifice. It's like 3 pages long. It's, that take maybe 2 minutes to film. And he uses the bridge.
3 minutes.
And
if it's 3 pages, that means just 3 minutes of filming.
Lots of visual effects.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, it could have, I read it over. It was 2.5 minutes of that. And anyway, I was all ready to send it to Alec, but it's like this, but there's more. You can put one in over here and over here. And I started writing more bridge scenes. And of course I had to write the stuff between the bridge scenes. And as I was writing stuff between the bridge scenes, I was kind of like truncating certain things and changing certain things. I didn't know what the full story was. I was like, well, as long as you can only do 2 15-minute things, let's change the story a little bit. Let's not make a 2-hour movie into 2 15-minute parts. Let's, change this and, have this. And anyway, I kept writing. Wendy came back. She had some dinner, whatever. I think I got a sandwich. Kept writing. Eventually, she said, "Honey, are you coming to bed?" I said, "No, I'll be in bed soon. I'll just go for the
right."
I think it was 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. I finished part 1, and
so you just slammed it out in a day. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that was the thing. Is I woke up about 4 hours later. It was 4. I got up at about 8 or maybe 9. I don't know. Jaden was coming back. His grandparents were bringing him back. They got there at 10. I was so out of it. Wendy's like, "Okay, honey, if you want to just go back to sleep, I'll take it down to the pool." We had a late checkout. Everything was good. I started to go back to sleep. Couldn't sleep. By 3 p.m., I had written part 2. Okay. I called this script Alt Axanar. I wasn't even writing it. I literally was watching it in front of my face. I was typing this. I didn't know how people were. I had people in dangerous situations. Like, I have no idea how they're going to come out of this. How are they going to? And I just keep typing. It was like, I obviously they'll come out of it like this. I had no idea. I was like, okay, what happens? And then the scene changes. Like, oh, that's really cool. Better type that down before the movie keeps going. Yeah. So like 35
I've heard a lot of writers have that experience.
I
kind of, when I write my scripts, I tend to write most of my scripts in the shower in the morning, taking a shower, and I'm thinking through. I'm even doing the lines, and then I'm thinking it and visualizing it all. And then once I'm done and out of the bathroom, then I go and just go to the computer.
Sometimes I write.
5 minutes later, it's all in there.
Yeah, I write my blogs in the shower, in the bathroom, brushing my teeth, doing other things, just like, okay, how am I going to start this blog off? And I'm going to go downstairs or take Jane to school. Then I come back downstairs, like whatever I thought in the bathroom, I write it down. But anyway, so less than 24 hours, Alt Axanar exists. And then nothing, because, I sent it to Alec, but he didn't want to read it. He wants to do his version, and I understand that. Mm-hmm. But I just had to get this thing out. And then it went nowhere. I just had it on my computer screen. That was it. And the following year, a fellow named Trey McElwain started doing Axanar comics. There's an Axanar groupie in all of us, I think, but certain ones were, more committed to this than others. And Trey hired his friend to make drawings of comic stories of the characters from Axanar. And so I borrowed his artist, a fellow named Daniel Fu, and I took that first 3-page scene and I fleshed it out into a 7-page comic book story. It's like, this would be really cool. And not only that, it wouldn't contradict anything that Alec was doing, because that was based on a throwaway line from his script. So it's like, just expanding what he can do. It's sort of like sneaking extra Axanar.
Similar to how his whole Axanar thing was based on a couple of lines from the original TOS episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Daniel was in the process of creating this comic, and it took many, many months for him to do this. And as he's doing this, I hadn't started sharing any of the comic pages yet. I was going to do that when it's done. It's now 2018. It is November. It's Thanksgiving of 2018. And the bridge is finally finished in Atlanta. And it looks gorgeous. It looks amazing. If you have any kind of video editing software for this Zoom call, This is where, during one of my interviews, I would actually show one of the pictures of the bridge, which you can find on my blog, and I would just slowly dissolve out to a shot of the bridge or several shots of the bridge
with
as
blinking
Jonathan
lights.
is staying off with the blinking lights,
Okay.
to just show how incredible this thing looked. And Alec invited folks down to Lawrenceville, Georgia, near Atlanta, to Axanar, to see this set and to play around on it.
Ask a quick question. I promise not to divert this.
That's okay.
You know how the original TOS set was modular, so you could pull out chunks of it to put cameras in and put them back when you need them? Can that his bridge do that too?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, it can. Everything is on casters. Unfortunately, the original bridge did not have a lot of very heavy wood and all the extra electronics, like the big screen TVs and everything. So the problem is that even though it's on casters, there's so much extra weight on each one of those that the casters underneath have kind of got crushed. And, so they're no longer round on the bottom. They're kind of like, look like this. And yeah, so unfortunately, the bridge is not really rollable anymore. But it doesn't need to be. But it's 360. It's completely coastal. It's gorgeous. I looked around at this bridge set. This has to be used. And of course, Alec did not have the bridge scenes in his script, and he told me, he shared later, that the reason he didn't have the bridge scenes in the script is at the time he wrote it, a year and a half before, he didn't know if the bridge was ever going to be finished. That was going to cost a lot of money. I mean, ultimately, I think Alec put like $250,000 of his own money into this.
Wow, that's dedication.
People have accused Alec of embezzling, and I was like, okay, if you embezzle, you're supposed to wind up with more money than when you started, and Alec is winding up with less. So anyway, so he wasn't sure the bridge was ever going to be finished. So he didn't want to have a script where they had to remove really good scenes because he didn't have anything to film on. So he did end up putting some bridge scenes back into his script. But I'm looking around this thing. Somebody needs to film on this, and Alec was fine letting other fan films, shoot there. I mean, that was his whole idea to begin with.
Right. And he still does that now at the high school, right?
Yeah. And other filmmakers like the Avalon universe. I'm going to get into in just a moment, because the next part of the story is that a few days after Halloween, and after I got back from Lawrenceville, it wasn't Thanksgiving. It was Halloween week, like November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, whatever. I came back to interview Josh Irwin, who had released his first ever Avalon Universe fan film called Ghost Ship. It's basically Star Trek meets The Walking Dead. And it had zombies on it, and there was, they had the TOS sets from Kingsland, Georgia. Looked gorgeous. Josh, of course, knows his cinematography perfectly, and I was interviewing him. And after the interview, we started talking about the Axanar sets, the Ares sets, because he had read the blog, he'd seen the pictures, and he was gushing, and he even said, if I could film on them, I would shoot from this angle, and I would use this kind of lighting, because you got a 360-degree bridge, all this stuff. And we've been so excited. And I said, well, maybe you could, I mean, you've got this new fan series you're doing, why don't you shoot something for Avalon Universe on there? And he said, well, the problem is I don't have a script that justifies that set. So without a script, it doesn't make any sense for me to go down there.
Is it because it's in the wrong time period?
It's the wrong time period. The whole thing about Avalon Universe was that, people were going to be on the USS Excalibur, which is the TOS bridge. So why would it look different in some way unless it was a different ship? But he didn't have any script that explained any of that.
Right.
And then I thought, wait a second. Josh, what if I had a script for you? Because I thought to myself, I'm only doing the comic book story.
So you already got basically the, what do you call them? Oh, crap. What do you call those things?
The bones?
No. Oh, God. you know, when you're making a movie and you have stills drawings, you know what they're
Oh,
called.
storyboards.
Storyboards, yeah.
Storyboards. Yeah, I mean, we certainly had storyboards, but the thing was, is not only did we have storyboards, but we had a filmable scene because the story of the comic book, which was called Stardate 2245.1, which is the day that December entered Sword, was just basically Garth on the bridge of the Ares and this other guy, Donovan, became Jaconde, on the bridge of the USS Artemis, and the two of them are running away from the Klingons. And with the one exception of sickbay, you don't need any other sets.
Right.
I mean,
which is a classic Star Trek thing. You got the two captains on two different ships talking to each other over their Zoom call before Zoom even existed.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're all used to that, you know?
Yeah. So anyway, I said, you know, this would be filmable, you know, pretty easily. You know, I didn't have any idea at that point. But, you know, this should be a pretty easy to film fan film. And he's like, well, you know, send me over the script. You know, let me take a look. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't have a script. I have the original 3 pages, but we have to expand that because a 3-minute fan film is nothing.
Well, big deal. You slammed up the whole thing in a day. So
well,
that's what I've discovered. I used to think, man, it must be hard to write scripts for shows. Now I realize, you know what, the script's the easy part. If you got to make a good one, it has to be good, of course, but still the time it takes to write a script is like a day or 2 or 3. And then it takes like 6 months to actually do the whole show based on that one script.
Yeah. Well, you have to refine the script too, because your first version.
Well, you change it as you go along, and you know, and so on.
But yeah, so I said, okay, give me a few days, and I took the comic book script that I had done and turned it back into a shooting script. Now, keep in mind, I've never really written. Well, I wrote a full script back in the 1990s at some point because I live in Los Angeles and everybody has a script. So in order to keep living in Los Angeles, I needed to have a script that nobody ever was going to make. Yeah. But I don't know how to make a script, so I turned this comic book script back into. And I expanded it so that the 7-page comic book script would be like a 12 or 13 or 14-page shooting script.
Right.
And so there we were. And I sent it to Josh, and he liked it. And then I contacted Victoria Fox, who was Josh's shooting partner in the Avalon universe. Okay. And, she was a director. And I, first of all, I thought, if they work together so well, I would love to have a woman in a prominent position, because there's like so few prominent women involved with Star Trek fan films. I mean, it's just one of those things where, like, look, we geeky Trekkies tend to be men more than women, but, there are women there, but they're not really showrunners very often. I'm like, okay, I would love to have that.
Slight tangent, just 5 seconds. Did you notice? Have you noticed that season 4 of Discovery is super strong, super heavy weighted on women characters?
Well, it's always been super heavy weighted on women characters.
Yeah, but now especially, I really noticed it this time around.
Yeah.
There's hardly any. I mean, there might be. Is there even one character in the show that you would consider a typical male?
Well, typical male, I don't know. I mean, no, I have a problem with people having a problem with being woke, because what they're basically saying is, I don't like gay people, and I don't like, gender.
It's not that. It's interesting that like it used to be like back in the 60s, you had your Captain Kirk, even though Star Trek was very for its time is very inclusive, and we had different races, but still, if you go back and look, it has with the races and stuff, but still the center of it is still your white male, typical archetype.
No, I mean, I used to say that the first female Starfleet captain was, Star Trek 4, Madge Sinclair at the beginning, and she was black, which was great. So it took them that long to put a female in the captain's chair and to put a black person in the captain's chair. So that, well, actually, no, the black person in the captain's chair was Star Trek 2, because you had Paul Winfield. So, it was one of those things where Star Trek got there eventually anyway, but there were a whole bunch of people who were not comfortable with her being in the chain of command or being on the bridge. And I feel like the people who are not comfortable with a gay couple being treated normally, and or a non-binary and a transgender couple being treated normally, like
Right.
if you think Star Trek being woke is a problem, you may be the
Don't
problem.
quite understand Star Trek.
You are the person who back in 1968 would have said, "I'm really not comfortable with this woke show putting this black woman and this Asian man on the bridge because it's not really American to me."
Right.
So that
the only thing I noticed in it just to me, like now in the 4th season of Discovery, it seems like they went overboard almost. So like basically everybody on the show represents more of a kind of a fringe, and then there's no center. Like now, I just wonder how the demographics would work. Like who the even though Star Trek's very inclusive and advanced, who's their audience? See, now I'm being a businessman. Like I think their audience is still like their core audience is like the white male of like 18 to 35. Isn't that what they're still trying to get?
You're thinking like a 56-year-old white male.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, you are an aging demographic. I am an aging demographic. They don't really give a crap about us. What they give a crap about is the young people who are beginning to become consumers, who are growing up on the internet, who are used to streaming services, and they want to bring them into the fold for Star Trek, which is why you don't see a lot of the old Star Trek, except you do in other ways to bring people into the franchise, like, the new Prodigy. But, so they give little pieces of what other Star Trek, because, hey, kids, you can watch these other Star Trek episodes, just ask your parents for permission. And by the way, if they're not subscribing, tell them it's cheap. But honestly, here's the thing. There aren't really more women than men in the cast of Discovery. You just think there are.
Okay.
And
can we go down that rabbit hole a little bit?
Yeah, sure, whatever. We'll come back
right now, my favorite character on the show, honestly, is Book.
Okay.
Like, I love him.
He's a male.
Yeah, he's a male.
Heterosexual male. He's black. I mean, you might not notice him because he's black.
He's a heterosexual black guy. And
by the way, that was not
he's like my favorite guy on the show. And
this is a great actor, but
yeah.
And, let's count.
Like, so the only other person who you could consider like a strong white male would be Saru.
Mm-hmm.
But you only know he's white because he is in real life, but he's underneath all that makeup. He's an alien.
Let me ask a question. Why did you forget about Stamets?
Stamets, okay.
Why did you forget that the blonde-haired male is a white male? Because he's gay? Everybody forgets Stamets. Yeah,
that's true. Because
so here you go. You got Book. I'm gonna count them off for you.
Okay.
You've got Book. You've got Stamets. Okay. You've got Saru. These are all the male characters. I'm going to put it over here. You've got Culber. You now have 4 male characters.
Okay.
You have a very recurring character in Admiral Vance.
Okay.
Okay. Plus an additional bridge crew members. You've got Bryce and you've got Reese. I mean, they're kind of secondary.
I mean, you hardly know. I don't even know who they are, really.
Well, you can't. You it's like, okay, well, Reese is the black guy, and sorry, Bryce is the black guy, and Reese is the Asian. But
I feel sorry for them because they've been on the show for so long and they haven't even had any lines until this season.
Okay. So let's look at the females then. Okay, I'm going to start counting this. Obviously, Michael.
Right.
And
who I like. I've always liked her.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really dig the only.
Oh, by the way, forgot a male. I realized that we don't see this as a male, but Gray is a male.
Okay.
Used to be a female, but now a male. But that's technically a male. Now, obviously, you don't see that as a white male because, first of all, Gray is of Asian descent, and kind of look at him, and don't really, see.
Right. But Gray's also now that I've only watched.
Adira is the one where you can't qualify as a male or a female. You might want to qualify her as a female, but that would be very rude.
But now it's funny because I'll probably get killed on the internet for saying this, but now Gray to me is female. Now that Gray has got the body and in episode 4 now has longer hair, wears makeup, and is
Welcome to the 2020s.
yeah. But this is the really interesting. I mean, she's kind of cute. I was actually feeling kind of attracted to her, to tell you the truth.
Hey,
So
go right ahead. Look, I
so
mean, here's the thing. Right now Facebook has what 57 different varieties of sexual identification that you can label yourself as.
okay.
Viva la difference, because honestly, you're never going to go back to just male and female. I am
Yeah.
sorry, folks. Anybody who is living back in the 1950s or even 60s or 70s when people were just male and female, those days are not coming back. Not without a Nazi fascist takeover of our country. So. Deal with it. And if you're going to deal with it, then understand Uhura is a black woman on the bridge. This is happening, folks. Deal with it. Okay? Sulu is not from China. George Takei is from Japan. He was in an internment camp. He is now a regular on a hit television series. Deal with it. Okay? It is not.
Okay, let's just throw the thing in that Sulu in the J.J. Abrams universe was played by an actor who is Korean.
Yeah. Who by the way is suddenly the character is now Sulu is now gay, but and George Takei was the first person to say I don't want him to be gay because the character was never. I was gay, but the character was never meant to be gay. So there's that. Anyway, so let's go count. So we got Michael, we got Tilly, okay, and then we obviously have other people on the bridge crew. We have
Now, I'm not just talking about the bridge crew. I'm also talking about the guest stars, because we got the president of.
I'll get to the president. I got to Admiral Vance. I'll get to the president. Okay. But just understand that as far as main characters right now,
right?
I've listed 2. I'm not giving you Adira. Okay, I've listed 2. Whereas when I was on main characters for men, I had 4. Now let's start going for the bridge crew. Detmer, Owasikam, Nilsson. Okay, now you've got bridge crew. In engineering, you've got Reno. Sometimes, occasionally, maybe.
Yeah.
And then of course you've got the Federation president, Rillet.
Yep.
And you've got maybe Charina, who is the recurring Vulcan president.
Right.
Have I forgotten anybody?
Well, maybe, but I can't tell.
Okay, so in this case, and I've just listed for you the men and the women, and we have the same number of fingers. So anybody who says there are more women, no, you just think there's more women. There's more gay people and strange gender things that are happening than it. No, there's not. No, there's not. There's one gay couple, that's 4 characters, and then there is one gender alternate couple. That's 4 characters total. Okay. And you can say, well, Jet Reno is probably gay because, the person who plays her, Tig Notaro, is gay. It's like, but you know what? It's not really being shown. We have no idea what Reno is. Honestly, we have one heterosexual relationship. We have one homosexual relationship. We have one alternate relationship. That's it. And if you're saying there's too much of one, what you're saying is, I just don't like that one. No. But you know what? That's the way of the world now. And by the way, the heterosexuals are both black. Get used to that too.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like Book, and I really like Michael.
Yeah.
The only complaint I have against Michael, and that's only because now I'm starting to take acting lessons late in life, is now she's doing certain things that my acting teacher is telling me I shouldn't do. Like, for one thing, I think she whispers too much, like that. It's just kind of, she goes there to try to be all, to have so much gravitas just by whispering. And like, now I'm kind of getting sick of it. So
you can fix some of that in post, but don't just blame her, blame the director. Because as you learn your acting class now.
Yeah.
If you're acting, if your director wants her to not to whisper, the director will say, okay, let's bring it up a little bit.
Yeah.
The director's fine with it. That's fine. All right. Anyway. Go ahead.
Okay. And then, so the only other thing I could say, well, the show, the thing I really like, I do like about Discovery, like I just watched episode 4 and I thought, this is a really good episode.
It was a great episode.
I liked it. It's my favorite one so far. I haven't watched 5 yet.
Not good.
And like, so it's, You mean it's not good that I haven't watched 5, or 5 isn't good?
I just watched it. I literally was like 3 minutes away from it when we started the Zoom call, but I
You
had
didn't like
seen
it?
enough to start writing my next blog review of it, and I don't know what I'll say in the next couple of days, but there's not a lot. I am so frustrated with so many things in it.
Okay,
But
well,
when you watch it, no spoilers,
okay.
but when you watch it, just remember the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking.
Okay.
We need to do things very, 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 very quickly, which means that every time something happens in the episode where they're just slowing down and having a really long, ponderous conversation,
Right.
I am yelling at the screen, for God's sakes, just
Yeah.
stun the person, beam them back up, and you're done.
Yeah, so I had that same complaint for the season opener, where well, I had two. We're getting way off the subject, but
Hey, we're going to end our
I had
third hour soon.
one thing. Why, when the ship gets hit, why are there rocks falling from the ceiling? Okay, number
And
one.
why are there random bursts of flame coming
I
from
know.
the airmen?
You know what? When I saw those flames coming out of the airmen, I'm like, well, this is like the Wizard of Oz, you know.
But it's like,
You know,
do you want to
who put the
serve on a
gasoline
ship?
in the ventilation system?
Do you want to serve on a ship where the very thing supplying the air that you breathe can literally burn your hair off?
Well, there
It's
was
like,
that. Okay, now let me get into this a little further. You probably know all this. I'm like, my first thing is, okay, the shields are up. They're getting hit by rocks. They're showing the rocks being deflected by the shields, and yet we're in the ship and it's getting beat to shit. Okay, what the hell good are shields if like you deflect stuff and then your whole bridge is falling apart, everything's blowing up around at you anyways, you know? So that was my number one complaint right there.
can't they just take the hammer and go like this?
Yeah,
Everybody
my
just
number two complaint, this is what's even brought this into my mind, was exactly what you were saying. They're showing the ship getting beat to hell, right?
Mhm.
And then people are just acting like it's normal and they aren't even scared. Like they're like talking to each other and like, oh hi, how are you doing? Yeah, well, let me just take care of this. Meanwhile, everything's going, you know, like, sorry. I mean, I know they're trying to make the show act like everybody's now Star Trek and everybody likes each other and it's no longer a dark show and it's more Star Trek-y. So now we got to be nice to everyone. But right in the middle of a battle, or right in the middle of when the ship's getting beat to crap and everybody's, you know, I think you know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
No,
any person would be scared shitless, no matter how many times they went through it, if everything's blowing up around them, right?
They said in Red Dwarf, brown trousers time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, I've got a love-hate relationship with Discovery, but I review it every week or almost every week on when it comes out on Fan Film Factor. So, you know, once again, go there. Under the blog subhead, this thing that says All Access Trek Reviews. So I haven't changed it to Paramount Plus Trek Reviews yet.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Episode
just
4
go.
was very, very good. I very much liked episode 4.
Episode 4 was amazing, and in fact, I actually said, I've been waiting for this. Episode 5, and I have to okay, you had all of it last week. I call balls and strikes. You know, people say you just hate Discovery. No, I don't. I call balls and strikes, and last week was a home run. Yeah. But this week was weak. This week, I was watching, and I don't usually yell at the screen, but I was yelling at the screen. You don't have time for this. By the 5th or 6th time I'm yelling at the screen that, you literally you've lost my belief. My suspension of disbelief has been
suspended.
It's been suspended. So sorry about that. Would you like me to get back to Interlude? Yes, or okay?
Please. It's about time we talked about Jonathan Lane.
Oh, I'm not going to find out anything new you haven't found out already.
Oh yeah, so you wrote the script.
So I rewrote the script. Victoria and Josh came on, and then my job was, I thought, to just sit back and let them make my fan film for me. But I was told by Alec, interestingly enough, in a conversation with the 3 of them, and me as well. No, John, you need to be executive producer. I said, but I've never executive produced before. And Alex says, oh, it's easy.
You just put your name in the credits.
Yeah, thanks for that, Alec. But I said, Alec, because he said, look, I can't do it. You know, I'm restrained from doing anything more than my 2 15-minute films, so I can't do yours. You know, Josh and Victoria, your directors, you have to be the producer. I said, well, what does that mean? And so I'll tell you, but it's real easy. It wasn't easy. My God.
I've nowadays they have this thing called a showrunner, right?
I was the showrunner.
Yeah. So I could see how it could be hard. Like in my thing, I'm the everything, right? In my show. So basically, if you're the kind of showrunner where like they call you up because the toilets are overflowing or like, there isn't enough food for everybody at lunchtime, or you got to deal with all that kind of crap. Every little thing ends up you have to deal with. If that's
Yeah.
it ended up, then I can see
nobody else will. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's so literally from day one, and even day -1, I was the person who had to make this happen. I had to make it possible for everybody else to make it happen, to be honest. And here's the thing: I'm not going to take credit for this fan film. I am simply going to take credit for letting the other people make this fan film.
Well, that's leadership.
And there's a big difference between those two things. But
well, I mean, does the president of the United States actually run the country? No.
No,
he just tells everybody else what to do.
Yeah, and there's certain things only the president can do. Right. But when it comes right down to it, the president can't do everything. So yes,
right. So you have to learn to delegate.
But I had to learn everything. First of all, I had to learn the different kinds of producers for it, because there's an executive producer, there's a producer, there's a co-executive producer, there's a co-producer, there's a line producer. There is
what's a line producer?
A line producer is the person who handles the budget.
Yeah. The lines, the line items.
The line items.
Okay.
And I had to be line producer. Victoria said that she was going to help me doing the line producing, but because she's done it before. But unfortunately, that did not materialize. Thank you. Victoria's very busy. But I had to basically take all of my experience as a creative director. That's where I came from. I came out of graphic design, creative direction.
And now you're a chief creative officer, by the way.
Yeah, well, eventually I was a creative officer. Yes, a creative director and creative officer.
As am I. We had that. Sorry, one more change. I promise it's the last one.
Over the business card, yes.
Chief Creative Officer, Pranakasha Productions, Matt Weiss.
Yep, I was a chief creative officer for.
This is my board of directors.
Are they bored? Oh, I see. They're very pezzy. No, my brother and I started the company in 1993, and he was the president and CEO, and I wanted to be chief something, and there was only the two of us, so I did the creative. He did the programming, and the business stuff.
What year was this?
1993.
Ah, crap! So you came up with that term way before I did. Then,
sorry.
I thought I invented it myself.
You know what? People were creative officers before I came up with it, so don't worry about it. There's no such thing as the original idea.
Shoot.
But anyway, as producer, I mean, line producer and everything, and there's so many different producers that do so many, like associate producer. Associate producer is basically what you give to anybody who does you a favor and like give you lots of money or whatever. Like my associate producers were all people who were like big donors. Plus Glenn Wolfe, who let me use a sick bay set. Yeah. But there's just so many different producers out there. That's why this Star Trek Discovery has so many producers listed in their opening credits. It's basically, it's like, giving ambassadorships after you get elected. It's like, oh, you gave me money, here, be ambassador to the Netherlands. And then there's like, producers who actually have to do something. And I was many of those people, although I only really have the producer name in my credit, but I had to figure out the budget. Now I did that along with Josh and Victoria.
Now, are you able to tell us what the budget was?
Yeah, I mean, the thing was, I made the mistake early on because I wanted to blog everything, and I literally, and I did. If you go to Fan Film Factor, you can see all of my interlude blogs, and they go back. There's been like 40 of them, and I take you through the entire process because I wanted to learn how to make a fan film. That's the main reason I wanted to do interlude. I didn't want to just make an Axanar fan film. I wanted to make a fan film and have that experience. And so I did a blog on my budget. We had all these different line items, and it was going to be like $18,500. And one of the things that we needed, for example, was we needed black pants. And I was like, okay, so we need black pants. People had to wear black pants with the uniform.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Although ultimately they really didn't, because most people couldn't see their legs. But
tux pants work great. They do. I use them. You can get them cheap too. You can get used ones pretty cheap.
Well, it turns out Alec actually had pants for Axanar that I was able to use. They were really, really cool pants. They were like space age pants. But anyway, I was like, okay, I'll just find some random pants on the internet and I'll budget them. And apparently I found, well, no, the thing was, is I just looked up black pants and I found black pants that I liked and I put them up there and the pants were like, $22 or $25 per pants or whatever. Like, well, when I go out and buy my pants are usually $30 or $40 anyway.
Don't you go to Value Village? I go to Value Village or whatever, used clothing stores. That's where I get almost all my props and tons of my costumes, super cheap.
Well, here's the thing. At the time, first of all, I didn't want them to look like crap. So I wanted to get decent looking pants. I mean, they didn't have to, be like,
well, hold on. Black pants, all you got to do is iron them. Plus, turn up the contrast a little bit on your video editor, and you'll never see any of the wrinkles.
Well, here's the thing. What you're doing right now is what everybody did to me after I published that blog. Everybody criticized me for spending too much money on my pants.
Yeah.
Now, realistically, I think I only had like 10 or 15 pairs of pants on there, but when you're spending $25 per pair of pants, that's way too much. So in publishing my budget, and this was a starting point budget, everybody was suddenly an expert. And all these people were telling me you should do this. And some of them were doing it in a very nasty way. And I just wanted to show people the process of budgeting. And yet everybody is like, what are you doing, Lane? Are you going to be embezzling money like Alec Peters did? Like, no, that was never my idea. I mean, if I was going to be embezzling money, the CBS guidelines allow you to get up to $50,000. I would have put that as my goal as opposed to $18,500. But I had a budget patches and I had a budget uniforms and very nice boots, lovely boots.
I got these at Value Village for $8. And so these are the best Star Trek boots ever. They're not even Star Trek books. They're actually women's boots, I think. But they happen to fit me, and I'm like, those would look great with my Star Trek uniform.
Kinky boots.
Sorry.
That's all right. Anyway, so I learned very early on, do not share your budget with line items with people. And so every time people have asked me, so what did this cost? What did this cost? Like, you know what?
None of your business.
I didn't.
None
of your business. It's just I don't want to deal with everybody suddenly becoming a budgeting expert.
Right.
It costs what it costs, and we made this. We ultimately, and by the way, we spent all $18,500. I needed to actually get it to 21 before we would actually have enough to finish it, because everything ends up just jumping out at you from behind a rock.
Right.
That's like, oh, I never knew we had to get this, and like suddenly, like chairs
for that.
Chairs for the tables because people have to eat. Okay, I mean, and this was like 3 days before we were filming, and I was like, I got the caterer. I found a really affordable caterer. He was only like $1,000, like $1,065 or whatever for each day to feed about 25 to 30 people on set, which is not bad. And he would do breakfast and lunch, and I was like very proud of this. And it's like 3 days before, and I'm in the shower because I do my best thinking in the shower, just like you do. Right. I'm like, holy crap, we don't have any place for them to eat at. There's no large tables or chairs. Where are people going to eat? I found out later that sometimes in a studio, people just eat on the floors. I don't want my people in costume eating on the floor. It's actually a very clean floor. Anyway, I end up going through the Atlanta area.
You don't want them spilling ketchup and mustard on the helm console.
Yeah, forgot. Well, a caterer actually.
Then the little buns will stick.
Caterer knows not to have anything, any sauces that are colored. So light vinaigrette on the salad. But anyway, so 3 days before, I am looking through the internet for anybody who like rents wedding tables, chairs, or whatever.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Just go to a rental place.
Yes, except that I don't live in Atlanta. So I'm calling from Southern California to try to find a place that can deliver stuff to Lawrenceville.
Oh, fun. Wow, that's
okay. And Lawrenceville is not, it's 45 minutes away from Atlanta. So I find something that's actually within about a half an hour.
Company tried to do that. okay, this is a huge tangent, but I live in Seattle and Boeing is a huge company here.
Mhm.
And like the 787 was supposed to be this greatest thing where like they're going to save all this money by having parts of the plane made from all different parts of the world. Of course, it became a total fiasco because, yeah, so everybody made their own part, but when you tried to put the sections together, oh no, it's an inch off. Now what do we do? The
Yeah.
wings don't quite fit the fuselage because wings are made in Italy, fuselage is made in South America, and the struts that connect it were made, in China. Darn.
Okay.
So they found out the hard way. That's a really bad way to try to design an airplane or build an
Well,
airplane.
same thing with making a movie. You don't know what you don't know until you find out that you don't know it. And so here I am, and I was like, okay, I can rent chairs and tables, and it's affordable. I mean, it was like just a couple $100 to get everything there, like 6 tables and then 2 longer tables to serve the food, and then 24 or 30 chairs or whatever, except that they won't deliver on a weekend. You have to pick it up. But you can't pick it up on a weekend. We were filming Saturday, Sunday because they're not open on weekends because people have weddings on weekends. They're open Monday to Friday. You pick it up from them on Friday, you return it on Monday. And suddenly
what a nightmare.
I have to find somebody. I'm not coming in until Friday afternoon.
Oh, God.
There's no way I can get from Atlanta to this place before they close because I'm literally landing as they close. So fortunately, one of my production assistants has a trailer. Just a little flatbed trailer. God help me. He actually had a flatbed trailer. And he said, sure, I'm happy to pick it up. And I can do it earlier on that day and I can return it for you on Monday. His name is Scott Goodman. And I said, Scott, you are a lifesaver. And he says, but I hate to ask you this, but it's dragging that trailer behind my car it takes up a lot of gas. Would you be willing to cover my gas? And I said, well, sure. I mean, obviously, how much gas, do you think you need? Because this is back when, before gas went up like this. But anyways, how much, you think you're going to need for gas? I said, I don't know, maybe $10 or $15. Like, sure. Would you like me to PayPal it to you now? I'll give you 20.
I can totally relate to this also because I also am the president of chamber orchestra, Octava Chamber Orchestra.
Everybody.
I'm the founder. And anyways, same thing. I have to deal with every time we have a concert. I also concert master, so I actually have to play, right? But then there's all this stuff I have to deal with every concert, which is all the little details that have to happen, to make that thing happen. And if one little detail doesn't happen, everything's screwed,
It is it is the most exhausting thing I had to do. I did all of the crowdfunding. I created the crowdfunding video. And I found the music guy who creates some music for. I actually paid money out of my own pocket to create this 30-second visual effects sequence, going to be like the first 30 seconds of the film. And I found a VFX guy. And
the D7 sequence that you're talking about?
Yeah, the opening, the very first 30 seconds.
When they're shooting the photon torpedoes, and you're looking right down the throat of it and everything. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I helped storyboard those, by the way. A friend of mine who does visual effects, his name is not Louis Anderson, but he didn't want to be identified by his actual name. So pseudonym is fine. So Louis Anderson is his real name. This is not real name. But anyway, so he gave me a lot of beautiful visual effects.
Oh, he did them all.
Yeah, he did. He did everything. And then Kevin Croxton, who is actually an Emmy-winning composer, I found him because he is a teacher in Arkansas, which is where Josh and Victoria live, but not incredibly close to him. But
that score is really good, by the way. Because I'm also I'm also a composer too. Oh. Like I write some of the music on my show too, and perform it and stuff. And so I did notice that the score is very good. So I was actually going to try to figure out how I could contact him, just talk to that guy and see what he's up to.
Yeah, I'll be happy to give you his information.
Okay. I may have run into him because there was a composer that I talked to who was right next to the Axanar table at Star Trek Las Vegas.
Probably not. No, I don't think he was there.
Okay, so it was a different guy.
It might have been Adam Mullen. Adam Mullen is
I forget.
He does a lot of fan films. Adam Mullen's also great. Yeah. If I didn't have Kevin to use, I would certainly use Adam.
Yeah. It's a lot of work. If you want to do, so like my solution, of course, is just I use a little bit of my own music and then I just steal music from everywhere else. You know, and I use a lot of TOS original music because it's actually super good.
Oh yeah,
it's really useful dramatically. Like, especially, I didn't realize it until I started using it in my show. I'm like, whoa, stuff is really good. These composers were great. And like, you can take little moments within like a 2 or 3 minute piece, you know, that you can find on trekcore.com, and you can blend in, you can fade in and out of different things, and if you do it well, it works great dramatically, really good.
and did you know some of those songs, those background music, actually had like had words to them? People don't know this.
Yeah, well, I know that
Like,
the theme, the Star Trek theme, has
yeah, but
words.
the other back. Listen to this. I found this many years ago. Okay, listen. This is when, you know, in what time. This is the words of the song. Okay, you ready? Kirk and Spock are fighting to the death on Vulcan. Spock is nuts because he's going through his ponvar. Pow is watching.
Somebody added that later.
Back in college. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
Don't edit it out. Let me embarrass myself.
I'm not editing anything. This is all great. This is golden, man.
Gold, man. This is gold. You're giving me 3 hours of gold. 3 hours.
Double my subscribership in one video.
I
can see it now.
4. That's amazing. Like, you know, if you're still listening at this point, just God bless you. I'm not even listening to you anymore.
I know.
By the way, this is
no caffeine.
I don't
yet?
Yeah. Are we in an hour yet?
We're past an hour. We're on hour.
Let's go to the tote board. Let's see how much we've raised.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We need a fundraise for something right now. So yeah.
Anyway. So I fundraised, and then, you know, it was all about getting ready for that first shoot and all the things that needed to happen.
Okay.
Which included getting various, you know, people hired for, you know, actors, you know, and when you're hiring, you want to pay people, but you can't because the guidelines say you can't. So you're basically begging people to come for free.
Right.
And you're offering them $50 to, you know, pay for their gas and, you know, pay for, you know,
right,
whatever food they needed to eat along the way, although you're feeding them as well. But, you know, basically this is, you know, a lot of people doing this out of the goodness of their own hearts.
I know. And it's amazing about Star Trek fan films. Yeah, especially the guys. I mean, like, well, you know all about it. I mean, also it's so stressful, right? You went through all this nightmarish thing, just figuring out where the damn tables and chairs are going to come from.
Yeah,
and it's all for because you love Star Trek.
Yeah, I love Star Trek. Yeah, I had to get measurements from every single one of our extras, and it's not just like 2 or 3 measurements. I had to get like 40 different measurements from them, and every single one of them, because the woman who was our seamstress, came up 12 hours from Florida with her son who had a driver. She's like 65 and she doesn't drive herself anymore. And, you know, she stayed there for 4 days. So I paid extra for her hotel. You know, she's staying with her son in the room. So at least I didn't have to pay for 2 hotel rooms. But, you know, she was already sewing when I got to Alex's house the night before the big shoot. She was already down there in the basement, and there were like uniforms upon uniforms upon uniforms. And she is just sewing these with her sewing machine because every single extra had given me their measurements. And there were like some of these I had to hunt down, you know, like a bounty hunter. I had to, like, you know, just, you haven't gotten me your measurements yet, and Karen needs them. Yeah. And, you know, so it's
I know all about this stuff. Not in Star Trek, but in orchestra. Just getting all the essential details. Some people give them to you. Some people are really good. Most people aren't. Most people you got to hunt down. You got to babysit. You know. Yeah. And then they'll give it to you at the last hour, last second. Mm-hmm. You know. Meanwhile, you're stressing out like, I need all this stuff and nobody's giving it to me. Then at the last second, everybody gives it to you.
There you go.
Like, I know. And then you got, okay, now I got 10 minutes to put all this together.
It is crazy. So, you know, all this stuff had to happen, and then suddenly we were filming. You know, there we were at Aries Studios. I got there at 8:00 in the morning, and there were already 6 people there. And Dana Wagner, who's sort of the Scotty of Aries Studios, was getting the bridge ready. He's the miracle worker. And Carolyn Shipman, who was my chief production assistant, had all of the forms that people had to sign because they needed to, you know, allow me to use their likeness and their, you know, and all that stuff. And of course, they had to agree to, you know, there's certain rules if you're in Aries Studios and you don't do this. And
Right.
so we have all of that from everybody. Everybody, even I had to sign that.
So
And
that's wild. So you had people signing all that paperwork the day of the shoot?
people came in and they were not allowed in the studio unless they signed the paperwork.
So what would you do if one of your key actors just suddenly said, I'm not signing that?
We would have been screwed. But I think we let everybody know that they were going to be signing stuff. But I mean, this is not the sort of thing that actors do. You know, I mean, we're basically saying, look, we get to use your likeness. Okay, you're not going to have a problem with this. And you know, obviously the main actors were, I mean, Alec was one of them, you know, and Warren Hawk was the other one, you know, Warren, you know, who played Jakande. And by the way, under the heading of nail biting time, we found Warren Tuesday before our shoot.
Wow, he was great.
He was
He's
amazing.
like one of the best presence. He's one of the best actors in that show.
Oh, he was incredible. I mean, and when Josh heard he recorded his audition over his cell phone because Victoria, who had been working casting an independent film, or I don't think it might have been a studio film in Arkansas. Like she had to cast 300 black people because it was a Civil War slavery film, and like none of them were right. And she finally found Warren, and he did his take, and he had that like, deep gravelly voice.
Right.
And Josh saw Warren's take over the phone. He said, "This is it. This is our guy." And of course, I'm there in Los Angeles, you know, basically chomping down my teeth to nothing because we haven't found Jakande yet. We're like 3 days from filming, and Josh, like, we finally found Jakande. Said, oh, thank God! So when I first met him, I didn't even know, you know, what he was going to look like, and I saw him, and I was like, man, I love that voice. I love your look. I was so happy.
He's
with
good.
him.
Well, he carries it.
He really does.
I mean, when I first saw it, I was immediately drawn to him, and I was like, this guy's good. And he just makes it all happen. You know what I mean? How you got to have, like, if you're going to have an ensemble, you still have to have a focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like the focus.
Yes.
And then it makes it all work.
Well, also credit Victoria Fox for directing him, because as an actor, she knows how, you know, because, you know, she told me, she said, you don't do a line reading. And, you know, she said, look, and only I talk to the actors. Mm-hmm. You don't talk to them. Nobody else talks to them. I talk to them. Although he did ask me at one point, you know, how am I doing? And I said, well, you know,
based on what are you talking about based on what you envisioned in your head when you wrote the script?
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't have enough time that morning to really have a read through of the script and or, you know, discuss with the writer, me, what I was thinking about for the character. So Warren didn't have a lot to really build on. So when he had been going for about an hour or so, and they took a little break, and, you know, Victoria had said not to talk to Warren at all because, you know, you don't want actors getting inside their heads. So Warren, I was out in the parking lot, or I was in the lobby actually, and he said, come out to the parking lot with me, because he knew that Victoria had said don't talk to Jonathan, or Jonathan, don't talk to Warren, and he didn't want her to know. And he said, I need you to tell me how am I doing. And I said, well, I'm not supposed to say anything to you. I know, but this is your fan film, your script. You're the fan. I'm doing it for you. You represent everybody else I'm seeing. Are you seeing what you want to see, or do you want to see something else? And I was, you know, my problem is I do not lie. I cannot lie. Yeah. You know, my wife will never ever ask me the question, do I look fat in this dress? Because she knows, you know, that I will not lie. But the moment there, I was just like, well, I think you're 70% there. And apparently I really shook him with that. And Victoria got so pissed off when she found out. But what I did was I gave him some feedback, and I said, look, here's the thing about Jakande. Jakande is kind of light and easygoing. He's got a good sense of humor. Those lines that are in the script where he makes little jokes, he does that because that's part of his captaining style. Garth doesn't make jokes. Garth is totally serious. Jakande, you know, occasionally will try to lighten the mood. I mean, this is the middle of a battle. You know, it's like little tiny jokes every here and there are not going to change anything, but they might make people, you know, feel a little bit more at ease. But here's the thing. At the moment that Garth says Admiral Ramirez is in sick bay, he's critical. That every bit of humor gets turned off, and you, in that moment, you know that your life is going to end in 2 minutes. You are that smart that you've sized this up, that there is no way to escape this, and Ramirez has to get out of there. So that is your pivot point. That moment, everything changes. And from that moment on, the humor is gone, and you are on task. And your task at this point is to sacrifice yourself on the ship. And there is no doubt in you at that moment, because you know how important this man is on the ship. And he said, thank you. He said, I didn't really have enough time to get an understanding for this character.
Right. Good.
And so, I got so bawled out by Victoria.
Well, she should have told him that.
Well,
the thing is, because an actor they have to know a direction where they're going. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of lines, right? There has to be some guideposts as to what's happening.
A lot of things happened. First of all, they drove all night long from Arkansas to Georgia. So, it was Josh, it was the sound guy, Earl Hale, who was excellent doing the sound, and Victoria. And they got there, I think, at like 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:30, and there was not a lot of time to prepare this. And, in retrospect, as producer, I realized that, the thing about producer and director is it's sort of like having Batman and Superman on the same team. Like, who gets to be the leader? So we butted heads a bit. But, it's supposed to be the director in charge of the set. So I did not. The only thing I did that day was figure out where we're going to be putting the hair and makeup people. We had no idea where to put them, putting them in the captain's quarters. Getting the tables there, making sure that, the caterer was able to set up, and I was just, I had my camera. I was literally recording everything. I was documenting everything. I was like whole behind the scenes stuff. Drove Victoria crazy.
The thing that's scary, I think it's so hard, is there's all this real world logistics stuff that you have to deal with, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
and if I didn't deal with it, nobody did.
It's so easy to get consumed by that, where you completely lose track of the vision of what this show is supposed to actually be. That's what's so hard, is to somehow be able to be both those people, deal with all the nitty gritties, but then somehow be able to come out of it and have a bird's eye view of the final product, and look and finally say, you know what, that little spot there is really not working. I know how much work it took us to get there, but we've got to throw that out and just do it again, because it just has to be redone. I don't care if it took us 5 hours. It's just crap.
Well, fortunately, we didn't have a situation like that. But what we did have was 50 people over the course of 2 days who were doing an amazing job. And the first thing that I learned when I got there, when I first walked in and discovered there's 6 different people who were already doing stuff, is that I was not really necessary for everything to happen, except to make that executive decision. Okay, we have no idea where to put the hair and makeup people. And like, all right, we're going to use the bunk in the captain's quarters as their desk. And we're going to set up there because it's quiet, it's away from everything. And okay, somebody needs my credit card because they have to go to Costco and buy water for people. Okay, here's my credit card. Please bring it back. And it was just one of those things where I had a team there. And it was an incredible team. I mean, I cannot imagine a better team. I'm sure James Cameron and Steven Spielberg have loved their teams too. But I have to say, Josh, Victoria, our first assistant director, who was also named Josh Wilcox, Dana doing the bridge stuff. We had 2 Scotts who are our grips, Scott Goodman and Scott Little. And the hair people, the makeup people, the costume people. Karen was sewing everything. I mean, she was sewing stuff while people were there. If it wasn't fitting properly, she was doing it. And
hurry up, we got to do the scene in 5 minutes.
Chef Rob, the caterer, and the lighting people, and and the sound people, and all the extras who were just sitting there in chairs for hours upon hours until we called them to be on set for 15 minutes, and then we're done, and then they're waiting for hours and hours again, and everybody. It was like everybody knew what they were doing. And I'm looking around like, okay, and I'm available. If somebody needs you to something, hey John, we need you. I'm there. But otherwise, that camera was going. And I was filming everything. And I'm on set because I'm allowed to be on set. You can't kick me off the set. I don't care if you're the director and it's your set or whatever. I'm the producer. I'm the reason this is happening for you. And I tell Victoria, I said, I'm going to film everything. I mean, I'll let you watch it later on, and you can tell me if there's something you don't want in there. But I filmed freaking everything because you don't get
on your
that
phone
time.
or just
on on this wonderful camera that I had bought. Yeah, this is a Lumix camera, folks, and it's amazing.
Nice. Yeah,
and I just got it a few weeks before. Kind of funny, by the way. Speaking of embezzling, I thought, maybe if there's a little left in my budget, I'll use it to help pay for the camera, and I'll call it an expense. Not even close. I'm like $3,000 out of pocket of my own money in this thing, and so by the time it came time to buy the camera, right before this, like, okay, I'm buying myself a camera because there's nothing left in my budget.
Yeah.
It's really weird, by the way, when you have money being donated to you, especially like through GoFundMe or whatever. Like every day they deposit a little bit more into your account, and you wake up one morning, your bank account's like $10,000 in it. Holy crap! And you're like, all the bills I can pay. Like, no paying bills. This is for your fan film.
Yeah.
And you have to just keep telling yourself you don't have $10,000 in the bank. Okay, you don't. You have just a tiny little bit.
Yeah.
Actually, I had a completely different bank account. I had to keep that money separate from a regular bank.
Yeah.
But anyway, during that weekend, it was magic. It was incredible. It was experience. There's no regrets I have at all about making this fan film. It was a bucket list item, and as tough as it was at times, and it was so difficult. I haven't even started talking about post-production yet, but let's not even worry about that. But I was there every step of the way because I wanted to learn. I wanted to experience this. And, as a blogger who writes about fan films, who interviews the people who make the fan films, this was so valuable to me.
Right.
Now I understand. I mean, even though I understand what it's like to make a $20,000 fan film, and some of the folks out there make like a $20 fan film, or a $200 fan film, even a $2,000 fan.
I make $500 fan films.
Hey, you know what? But I still understand what's involved, which is why I will never ever criticize a fan film.
Yeah.
I have two rules on fan film factor. Rule number one is there is no such thing as a bad Star Trek fan film. And rule number two is if you see a bad Star Trek fan film, refer back to rule number one. Because these folks, I mean, to criticize a Star Trek fan film or any fan film is like shooting fish. I mean, it's so easy to do. But what's difficult to do is to actually make a Star Trek fan film.
Yeah.
Some fan films are the equivalent of a kindergarten play, and the broccoli forgets his lines, or the carrot isn't speaking loud enough, or whatever. And yeah, sure, you can criticize the broccoli and the carrots, or you can say the teacher really should have gotten a better performance out of the rutabaga. But the fact of the matter, these are wonderful kindergarten kids. It's your kids. They're cute. They're out there. They're enjoying themselves. They're having fun. Support that. That's my thing. That's why I do this. It's been 5 years I've been doing this blog, almost 6 now.
So when's your next fan film?
Everybody asks that. Oh, you know what? I keep saying. At first I said, "Let me finish the first one." Now the first one's finished. I don't know. One of the fellows that I interview is
okay. How about this? When's your next fan film script?
Not even. I mean, I have my alt Axanar script, and at some point when Axanar comes out, I will publish the alt Axanar script after that to let people see what I would have done. But here's the thing. This was an itch I needed to scratch. I was about to say, Sam Cocking said, once you make a Star Trek fan film, you have to make another one. But you know what? I did scratch this itch. I know what my next fan film will be if it happens. And no, I won't tell you, but I do need to find dancers. Like really good dancers, not the kind that don't know what they're doing. And that'll be the big expense for the crowdfunding if I do it. But when all is said and done, I don't need to make that. It's enough that I made Interlude. I'm happy that I made Interlude. And that
Interlude was really high quality.
Yeah, because I'm a fan of Axanar. I didn't make Interlude to make a Star Trek fan film. I made it to make an Axanar fan film, and I made it to make a fan film, just to have that experience, and I've succeeded in doing that. And I had amazing people working on it. And, they all put in so much time and effort and such. And I don't know, maybe I'm just really good at talking people into doing stuff. But when you're basically trying to have a volunteer put in months and months and months and months and months of their time writing music or editing, I mean, I don't know
You
why
did the whole
Josh
score
Irwin.
volunteer? Wow.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge amount of work to do an orchestral score like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, it's unless he just took stuff he already had, but
Nope.
if he wrote it all from scratch.
He's a big Trekkie, and he was excited about this, and he was. I mean, at one point, I gave him some money because I asked him to do something for me that we had never really talked about, and it wasn't really for the fan film. It was for the funding of the fan film, and he wrote me this extra piece of background music that I was able to put underneath my Ask video. Because the thing is, you can't pay people. That's the problem. The CBS guidelines, it has to be an amateur production. No paying people. He wrote me this extra piece of music that never appeared in Interlude. So as far as I'm concerned, I didn't pay him.
Well, you can do a stipend, or you can donate, or whatever.
Well, but here's the thing: almost everybody worked either for free or for gas money. And it was just, certain people I couldn't get to do it for free. Chef Rob had to charge me for the catering. I had to pay for the chairs and the tables, and I gave, gas money to Scott to go and pick them up. I took people to dinner. I paid for Warren's dinner that night. I couldn't not. I bought Chinese food for everyone. We didn't have a wrap party. We basically had Chinese food the second night. I paid for Josh's, travel, his gas and his lodging, Victoria's lodging. Except one time they stayed at Alex's house. But this is the thing, is that, these people do this for the love of Star Trek. And, so they were willing to do this. If I had paid Louis Anderson what he was worth, those visual effects, they would have blown my budget. I would have spent $50,000 on those effects.
Right. Yeah.
But he's a friend, and Josh is now a friend. All of these people that I work with, Mark Edward Lewis, an amazing person. He's a friend. He taught me how to trade crypto.
Speaking of visual effects,
yes.
And I can't remember if this is in the previous versions of the film, but I just watched your very latest one that you just put out.
Want to explain that to people? Take a moment.
So in the description is a link. Actually, probably I should put a link to fanfilmfactor.com, right?
Yes.
And then on the splash page of that, on the splash page of that website, you talk about your newest version, I think it's version 3.0.
It's not going to be the splash page of the website by the time they go there, and have the blog up. But here's the thing: if you scroll down, or if you just go to the blog thing, and there will be a history of, it'll just say Interlude.
Okay.
Blogs. I do my Interlude Confidential thing, but yes. Okay. Really fast. There have been 3 iterations of Interlude. The first one came out on April 5th. It featured Paul Jenkins, who is the fellow who actually saved Marvel Comics from bankruptcy, as our chief engineer. Paul was, at the time, the director of Axanar, and he was helping Josh and Victoria and me as we were doing post-production, and he was counseling us so that we wouldn't throttle each other when we didn't agree on things. And so, in very, gracious appreciation of his help for us, we asked him if he wanted to appear as the Artemis chief engineer. He was more than happy to do so. So we filmed him literally a week before the quarantine stuff happened, and he was our Artemis chief engineer. And we released the big premiere with him in there. Except that in the intervening time, he and Alec had a falling out. He was fired as the director of Axanar, and then there was a lawsuit and a copyright claim, and God knows all this other crap. And I wasn't really getting involved in it, but unfortunately, he contacts us a couple of days before we go live with Interlude saying, I want you to remove my any footage. Now, how are we going to refilm his scenes? I mean, we need the Ares Bridge. We're still in lockdown. I mean, this is April.
Oh, he was on the bridge. He wasn't in the engine room.
We didn't have an engine room, so we basically just put some pipes up behind. Take a look. That's actually the pit of the bridge where they are.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. Oh, that's TOS. They did shit like that all the time.
Yep, just bring a wall in behind somebody and put them that. Or
yeah.
So anyway, so we still went live with the premiere with his footage, but Josh Irwin drove round trip the following weekend from Fayetteville, Arkansas to Lawrenceville, Georgia, with Tyler Donovan, his best friend. And Tyler, who is a Michael J. Fox impersonator in his spare time, he's also a really good actor, put on the engineering outfit and redid Paul's lines. And 2 weeks later, we were able to put a Paul Jenkins-free Interlude version 2.0 up.
So did you just do that with a green screen?
No, we basically reset up the bridge.
Oh, okay. Because you could have easily done it. You could have easily done it with the green screen too.
Yeah, we could have.
Because I do that all the time. I mean, I could have done it.
Well,
yeah.
But Josh, there's a certain quality when you see a green screen with a virtual background, and
Yeah,
Josh,
but if it's already over that communicator console, anyways, you could totally get away with it. And if it didn't look quite right, just put some static on it, and then you'll never know.
You already had the static. No, Josh knew he could do this right, and he doesn't have a problem driving 11 hours in each direction with Tyler because the two of them are buddies. And anyway, they then literally did this over a 2-day period. So they drove 11 hours one day, slept, woke up, filmed the scenes, helped Alec with a couple other scenes. They filmed something for Avalon Universe very quickly. Got back, and they got home at 3 or 4 in the morning. And a week later, we had Interlude version 2.0, where you can see our Michael J. Fox impersonator as the engineer of the Artemis, and Tyler does. He's a professional actor, so he did a great job.
Yeah.
Tyler, once again, somebody I didn't even give him gas fare. He got nothing for doing that, and but he did a nice job, and so by middle of April, Interlude was done. Except that Josh had wanted to do a different transition. We have 2 parts. If you haven't watched Interlude yet, we have 2 parts of Interlude. The first part is a live action battle. You're in the middle of the battle. And then there's a transition to 10 years later, and Garth is talking about it
right
in the documentary style of Prelude to Axanar. I wanted to
right.
And there was a shot that Josh wanted to do for the transition that starts as a close-up on Garth.
Right.
And then the camera slowly pulls away from him. And he's doing this interview. And because there's a close-up of him just at the end of the dramatic sequence, it goes from close-up to close-up, and it almost looks like he's coming out of a memory. Something that's haunted him. And unfortunately, we only had one good take of that. There were a couple other takes, but they weren't usable. There's one good take, and Victoria, the director, didn't like that take. So they didn't use it. And Josh had always really wanted to try that take. So we had a different transition where basically it's a locked camera and we just, no zoom out or whatever. And so we transitioned with this, cut to a logo for the 4 Years War documentary with a Federation logo on it.
I mean, there's so many ways you could do the transition.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't not like it because of that transition, but but I was one of my Interlude Confidential blogs I was doing on the editing. Literally everything that happened on this fan film. If you want to know how to make a fan film, go back through all my Interlude Confidentials. I will take you through it step by step. And I was doing one on the editing, and I actually had the rough cut and the picture lock.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through, and I have a video where I take you scene by scene through the rough cut, which is the very first cut that the editor puts together saying, okay, this is the way I think it should be. Mm-hmm. And then the picture lock is speak now or forever hold your peace, because once the picture lock goes to the composer, he makes the music based on this. So if you decide later on that you want to make that scene 2 seconds longer or shorter, that screws up the music, and your composer will take a shotgun and he will kill you. So do not do that.
Yeah.
Picture lock means lock. And so I go through from the rough cut to the picture lock, and going through. I was asking Josh about something, and he said, speaking of editing, I was hoping to do this alternate ending, this alternate transition, and I won't post it anywhere official. I just want to kind of see what it would look like. Maybe post it on my own YouTube channel to show people. And I didn't even know this shot existed. And I said, well, I'd kind of like to see what it looks like. Show it to me. And he shows it to me, and there's that cut from the close-up to the close-up with the pullback. And there wasn't even like different music around because we didn't have different music. And I was just like, wow, that small change makes such a huge difference.
Yeah. It's amazing how you can fix stuff. There's so many different ways that you can, a little thing just put right in the right spot can just make all the difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I said, Josh, let's do this right. Let's make, there's no fan film police that are going to, arrest you for making a new version of your fan film. Who cares? Look how many times George Lucas.
Just call it, all you have to do is instead, you call it 3.0. You could also call it director's cut or something like that.
But the thing is Victoria was the director.
Yeah.
Josh was the director. They called the director of photography's cut, but who wants to say that? No, it was one of those things where I said, this is so powerful now. This is the version I want to enter in film festivals. And so I said, let's contact Kevin Croxton, our composer. Let's see if he'll remake the music. I thought it'd be an easy thing because Kevin already had most of the music. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit shorter because using the new transition, Garth talks about certain things during that zoom out that was already there later on in his interview section. So
yeah, there's ways around it. Like, if the scene's shorter and the music doesn't fit, you can always like fade in a little. You can fade the music in, or you can splice it and fade it. You can do things like that.
We weren't going to do that. No. We called up Kevin and he insisted. And once again, he isn't charging me for about 4 months of his work.
Yeah.
But and by the way, he did this recomposition while one of his parents is in the hospital, not doing particularly well.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why it's taken 4 months for this to happen, because he's spending weekends with his dad.
Yeah.
So thank you once again, Kevin, for doing such an amazing job. But
yeah.
In the meantime, Josh,
he uses a library. It's not a real orchestra, right?
He's played, I think, 6 or 7 different brass instruments.
Oh, okay. So there's some live musicians.
some live stuff.
So it's a mix. You mix it together. Yeah.
He's laid down
all those tracks,
I think he's laid down like 40 or 50 different tracks.
Oh wow.
On this. Yeah.
Wow, he put a lot into it. That's expensive. Well, does he have his own studio?
He has his own studio.
Okay.
No,
because just to do that, basically that's a whole Star Trek fan. If you're using real musicians with all those tracks of music, then mixing.
He's not using musicians. He played all those tracks himself.
Oh, he plays all these different instruments.
He's got a French horn. He's got a trombone. He's got a bassoon. He's got I don't even know how much stuff he has.
He's great if he can do all those that well.
Yeah, look, I'm going to say it one more time. He won an Emmy. It was a regional Emmy, but he won an Emmy. He does this professionally. He also teaches in Arkansas now because, but he still does this professionally.
Well, it sounds super good. Wow. Okay.
And and I met him because he made a Star Trek fan film. Every year, his kids at his school, he has 4th and 5th graders in his music club, make a fan film. And the first fan film they made was a Star Trek fan film called The Bunny Incident, which you can find on my Fan Film Factor.
Okay, interesting.
Anyway, the adventures of the USS Parkview, and all of his kids sing their way through this really, really fun Star Trek fan film. And then the next year they did Batman, and he just finished, thanks to COVID, it took 2 years to finish, but he just finished a James Bond fan film with his 4th and 5th graders. That's adorable. And it's winning awards. It's on the thing. It's on the,
that's cool.
Yeah. So, anyway, I was just going to say, so Kevin redid the music. Josh redid the editing of the interview portion. And then Josh said, as long as we're changing some of this around anyway, he said, the one thing that we're getting criticized on, like one of the only criticisms that we got is that while these 2 ships are in the middle of battle with the Klingons, the camera's not really shaking that much. There's a couple of places where it shakes, but like if it gets hit, but
need more camera shakes. Yeah.
And so he's like, we could add some more camera shakes to make it look more like it's in balance. You're like, they look too calm. And so we go and add shakes. That alone took like 2 weeks because Josh, initially was like adding.
I noticed, actually, I did notice the camera shakes are really good. They don't look fake. They look good. The other thing that struck me, how did you guys do those sparks? Did you add that in post-production?
Yeah, added those in post, yeah.
Okay.
At one point I wanted to blow up the bridge, but Alex you want to pay an extra $2,000 of fire insurance on your production? Like, no.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I figured it was something like that. Like I was thinking, how would I do that? I'd probably just get a sparkler and put it on a green screen and get the sparks and then do it like that.
Yeah.
So he just used After Effects.
Yeah, he's a really good film editor too. So
yeah,
he knows what he's doing.
I have After Effects, but I still haven't committed to using it. I use Premiere Pro, and Premiere Pro does just about everything I needed to do.
I use Premiere. I love Premiere. But I'm not nearly the editor Josh is. So
yeah.
But when all said
so I got a question. This is the whole question about this was I noticed, and I can't remember if this was in the original, but I noticed in the new version. Can I do spoilers? Oh, maybe I should.
Okay, everybody's. If you haven't seen it yet, just stop. We already said Jakande dies. So
okay, if you haven't seen it yet, then
watch it. Come back. Come on,
you can come back because this is a major spoiler.
Like 2 hours and 45 minutes that they've been watching us. So
okay, after the hull breach and the
welcome back, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Hull breach. The oh shoot, what's the name of the ship?
Ares is the one with the hull breach.
No, the
Artemis is the other one.
No, the Ares.
Are you talking about the warp core breach or the hull breach? One of them.
No, the warp core breach. I'm sorry.
The warp core breach. Yes. So
the Artemis
shuts down. Artemis. Yeah.
Okay. Kaboom.
Kaboom.
Right.
Yes.
My only complaint about that is it shouldn't look like a Star Wars explosion. It should look like a nuclear bomb going off. So it should be.
That's the difference.
But I'm not going to. That's not the point I was going to say, because it's a matter antimatter explosion. So it's got to look like some kind of universe-ending event, right? Anyways, forget that. But I noticed that in the version I just saw, it didn't destroy the D7s; it just stunned them. So are they going to come back to life in a future episode?
So here's the thing about the D7. I can't give too much exposition in a 9 or 10 minute movie.
Okay.
So I will tell you what I know from Axanar. The D7s are a huge leapfrog over the D6s, the same way that the Ares class was, a huge step forward and really changed the course of the war. The D7s were a leapfrog over that to change the course of the war. And in fact, it was the heavy cruisers, the Constitution class, like the USS Enterprise, which was the answer to the D7s. We had a space race, an arms race.
Okay.
But here's the thing about the Klingons. They had 3 levels of protection for their D7s. The first was they were very, very tough. I mean, incredibly well reinforced. So they could take a shockwave. And, that made it very difficult for a photon torpedo to have an effect on them. And the second level of defense was that their shields had a way of dissipating energy on a whole different level.
Mm.
So phasers can't really affect them. I mean, unless you hit them at full phasers at point blank range, you can't damage these ships with the level of weapons that are on the Ares class ship. I realize I said 3, there's actually 2. It was just basically a really strong reinforced hull for photon torpedoes and shields that can just push away energy, both kinetic energy and other kinds of energy.
Okay.
So for all intents and purposes, the D7s are indestructible, at least in that time period. Obviously, later on, photon torpedoes would get better, whatever. So
maybe the photon torpedoes have this new technology that lets it sort of bore through the shield before it blows up. That'd be cool.
Oh, well, for the Federation?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever happened in the 20 years, more powerful yields or who knows. But the idea was at that point, there was not enough firepower on the Ares to destroy the Klingons, which is one of the
Right.
reasons why during it they never fire a shot. I mean, part of it is because, and I have this in the background voices, the phasers and the photon torpedoes, the aft torpedo launchers are out. Because a lot of people say, why don't they fight? Why are they just running away? It's because they don't have weapons right now, and even if they did it, they wouldn't work. They've tried this. You're coming into the chase while it's happening. They've tried to defend themselves. These things are
They're on the run.
They're tough mofos.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I wanted the antimatter explosion to not destroy the ships, to show how tough they were. So yes, they're right there at ground zero of an antimatter explosion, but it pushes them back. They're reinforced. Their shields are dissipating a lot of that energy, but it's still knocking them out. But if an antimatter explosion can't destroy these D7s, holy crap, talk about brown trousers time.
Yeah.
And that's where we leave it, because there's only 3 D7s out there. And even when Axanar comes, there's not that many. But with just a few D7s, in my alt Axanar script, there's like 12. I think Alec only has like 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever.
That's a negotiation you have with your special effects department.
Well, Alec doesn't have to worry about negotiating the special effects department easy, but what he has to do is he has to worry about his script when there's actually the Battle of Axanar, of explaining how many D7s there are. In my alt Axanar script, I have 12 of them, which is even more difficult.
One for each month.
Yeah, exactly.
Or one for each disciple.
Or one for each heavy cruiser. But in the end of part 1 of my alt Axanar script, and I won't give away spoilers of part 2, but at the end of part 1, this is an amazing. And this does not happen in Axanar, so I'm not ruining anything. But at the end, but they're approaching the Constitution class ships, all in space dock, all in dry dock, being constructed over Axanar. And people are like, "Hey, the Constitution class was constructed over Earth, not Axanar." Yeah, trust me, don't worry about this. Anyway, they're coming in, and the D7s are basically.
Oh, this is like Pearl Harbor.
Absolutely. So a lot of World War II stuff in Axanar. Anyway, they're all coming in, and they manage to get past all of the defense waves. And anyway, these D7s are barreling down on pretty much ships under construction. The Constitution fleet is there. And they're like at point blank range, about to destroy our hope, our last hope. And that's where part 1 of the alt Axanar script ends. Yeah, I know. I almost wish that Alec could do that one. Would you like me to make another fan film? That's what I want to make. Well, unfortunately, I can't, because Alec is going to be making Axanar, and I would never do that to him. But honestly, and then the end of part 2 is there's a sequence at the end of part 2 that, as far as I'm concerned, is the most exciting Star Trek sequence ever. I mean, even in like Star Trek movies, if done well, if done right. I mean, I would so love to see it. It could be done in visual effects. I've even, I could storyboard it in a second, but it is so like last minute. You know what you have to do. The clock is ticking. The ships are getting battered. Can they make it? It's kind of a race to the finish, and it's so freaking exciting. And so I'm really hoping that Alec finishes his Axanar, because I want this alt Axanar to finally go up in fan film factors like a charity.
Yeah, that's the thing I've discovered about fan films, is that you can't seem to do one, because like, at least writing scripts, I have like the opposite of writer's block. Like when I'm starting to write a script, it's like
writer's diarrhea.
It keeps coming, more and more comes out. Like, the funniest thing is, like, in my show, my initial idea was I was going to do a fan series of shows that were like 3 to 5 minutes long tops, and that was an episode. So I wrote the script for my first 3 to 5 minute show. That turned out to be 17 minutes long by the time I was done. And then the second episode was like 30 minutes, and the third episode was an hour. And I'm like, okay, so what I had to do is I had to cut episode 3 in half, call that episode 3. And what I'm working on is episode 4. Is really the second half of what was the original episode 3.
We have to do that with this interview because we're about to hit 3 hours.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So how are we going to wrap this up then? So maybe we can just go slam bang. Okay. Good night.
Yeah, you can do that because I got to make my son some dinner.
Oh, yeah.
I finished watching the last minutes of Discovery. What?
Oh, you're in California.
Los Angeles, yes. You're in Seattle. We're
duh. Okay. For some reason,
I already did that math in my head. I'm really quick on that.
Okay, so we're on the same time zone, actually. So it's only 8:53, and it's Friday night. Oh, boy.
Started this at 5.
Yeah. Anyways.
6, whatever it was. 6.
Well, how do we wrap this up then? Let's just wrap it up.
Well, okay, love you, bye. How about that?
Yeah. Well, okay. Is there any essential topics we need to hit still?
Yeah, unlike Gene Roddenberry, I think we actually handled finishing most of our tangents.
Okay.
But no, I just I'll finish this up by just saying that if you haven't watched fan films, Star Trek fan films, give them a shot because there are some that are they will surprise you, especially Prelude to Axanar. You watch Prelude to Axanar.
Prelude to Axanar is really good.
Yeah,
I consider that the best produced fan film I know.
I think it is probably one of the top ones. Also, if you're an old school Trekkie, Star Trek Continues is an amazing. Yeah,
that's great. I've watched a bunch of those.
But there's other things.
So which is Star Trek Continues the one that did the Sulu episode that no,
that was Star Trek Voyages.
Okay, but that was very good too.
You want to look for that one. That one is called World Enough in Time. So just type in World Enough in Time Sulu Star Trek into YouTube, and you'll be able to find it. You can also find, by the way, you can find that on fanfilmfactor.com.
Oh yeah, I'll put a link. Should I put a link to your Facebook group down there too?
Oh, yeah. So the Facebook group is Fan Film Forum on Facebook. So it's in the description. We'd love to have you. But here's the thing: go to Fan Film Factor, and there's one of the things in the top of my blog is a link for a list of fan films, and in that is rate by rating. I know what they say. There's no such thing as a bad Star Trek fan film, so my ratings go from decent effort to pretty good to whatever my other one is after that. Highly recommended, and finally must see. So everybody gets a participation prize.
Cool.
But start with the highest ones and go down through them. The ones that are must see. Interestingly enough, Prelude to Axanar is not on there yet because I haven't finished writing that blog yet. I can only go as fast as I can go.
Yeah. And these are all your opinions. It's not like you did a survey or something like that or anything like that.
No, it's because it's not enough. I mean, this is coming out constantly. Although we do have our own awards. We have the Bijo Awards that are awarded every year by at the Treklanta convention. Eric L. Watts has like 10 or 11 or 12 professional judges who worked in television and or Star Trek themselves to judge fan films. This year there's like 10 hours of fan films that had qualified for judging. God, poor judges. And there were like 3 fan films that took most of the awards, like for visual effects and for music and for acting and directing, whatever. But there were like 40 that were entered. 3 of them just walked away with everything this particular year. And of those 3, all of them were rated must see on Fan Film Factor, which just means that I'm not crazy. There were another 2 that did not win, that were also in must see category that didn't get their didn't win the big awards. But honestly, if I rate it as must see, you probably will enjoy it.
Great.
And if you still enjoy stuff, go down to the highly recommended. And if you want to go to the pretty good, you can see the stuff that's shot on a cell phone. Just for shits and giggles, what do you say? But if you're a Star Trek
cell phones are awfully good these days.
Yeah, like it's not. Shot of the cell
if you put a cell phone on a tripod with and basically it's not whether you did it on a cell phone. It's like how good the lighting was and how good you figured out the shot.
Yeah, and and there's some fan film makers who get better year after year after year. Like Vance Major, he said he's remember a million years ago when we started this, and he said Vance Major's made like 150 fan films. Well, his earliest ones, you can hear the wind more than you can hear the people talking. He's gotten better about that. During the pandemic, all of his fan films basically just turned into intergalactic Zoom calls. Where one person on a starship is talking to somebody else on the starbase, and I've been in his fan films, and I recorded myself just into my camera. I put on one of my Star Trek uniforms that still fits.
I'm in my character, Captain Hardinger, is in a couple of his fan films that he hasn't released yet.
If you're breathing, he will put you in his Star Trek fan film, and sometimes even if you're not.
Yeah, it's fun.
It is fun.
Actually, he showed me a script, one of the scripts that Captain Hardinger's in, and I was like, I like this script. This is cool. So hopefully we'll go farther with that.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do a thing where I was trying to do a collaboration. Actually, I do have a thing up my sleeve with Axanar too. In fact, I did a real short little Star Trek ad to help a GoFundMe that I have up helping these kids get education in Liberia, and that's in the description too. And I took some clips from Axanar, and then I talked about how my character, Captain Hardinger, fought in the Battle of Axanar. And he was like, I didn't fight in the Battle of Axanar just so a bunch of Starfleet eggheads can sit around and philosophize all day. That's his big line. But anyways, so it goes. But
well, I'm not going to start you on another tangent, but if you want to have another interview with me at some point, the one tangent we did not get to was all of the people who've departed Axanar when we were talking about Robert Meyer Burnett and everybody else who left. But yes, just to kind of put a final nail on that, there have been a number of people who have left Axanar in various, stages of, either grief or anger or whatever. And there's a lot of people who are still around. Including myself, and one of those things is it's Democrats and Republicans. Unfortunately, they're just they're far apart. They're living in two different realities, and they both see themselves as the heroes. So ultimately, all I want to do is see Axanar done because I'm a big Axanar fan. Mm-hmm. I want to release my alt Axanar script. I've got a mini novella that I wrote as a sequel to Axanar called Why We Explore. I already wrote an Axanar short story called Why We Fight. So
novella. So hold on for a sec. So
40 pages.
So, and that's just a book. You just read it, or
I'm going to release it as a PDF at some point. But
had you thought of doing it? How about doing it as an audiobook?
Don't make me do another audiobook. I'm currently recording the book I actually did release back in 2011, 2012, which was called Being Santa Claus. You can still order that on Amazon.
But when I'm thinking like the Axanar one would be cool, or do it. Well, some audiobooks are basically radio shows. Mm-hmm. You've got different actors doing the voices. You got sound effects. You got background music. You got the whole deal.
Mine wouldn't be. Mine doesn't. Yeah, I don't need to do this as an audio drama. It is narrative. It is not. The other story I wrote, Why We Fight, is it could be an audio drama. I wrote it, the people could actually perform it, but not Why We Explore. Why We Explore, there's colorful prose in it. It's really a normal thing. As doing it as an audiobook, I could, but there's a time when people actually read. And I don't know. I don't know.
Going away, but
I don't know. I mean, it's I hadn't even thought about it until you said something. Maybe I could. So, who knows?
My wife's a real bookworm. She gets up in the morning. She's reading on her Kindle all through the day. She's reading on a Kindle, or else she's listening to an audiobook. Like all day long, she's going through either audiobook or Kindle. That's there are folks like that.
Yeah, not me.
Yeah,
I'm a slow reader. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, we'll have to we can always do another interview. Yeah. So obviously we just say, hey, let's go pick a time and then just start talking.
Exactly. And right. I don't know how many people, I mean, when you, on your stats or whatever, when you see like, I post my Zoom call interviews and whatever, I look at my stats on YouTube, and the thing is like, okay, this many people, like 300 people watched your thing. And then like, after the first minute or two, this many people watching, and this many people.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to the end, you've got like 3 or 4
One
people.
person. You win the prize. Hey, if you're still watching, put this word in the comment, and we'll send you a free T-shirt.
Yes.
Anyway, all right. So I think we're done.
I think so.
Time for dinner.
And this is 3 hours.
Well, it's been good. It's great getting to know you a little bit, Jonathan.
You too.
And we'll look forward to talking again.
I'll be here.
All right. Live long and prosper.
Peace and long life, and
all that stuff.
Fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life.
For the benefit of all beings everywhere.
We gotta change.